but just in case that this is your first time here, I use a system on a scale of 1 to 10. It's my own system. A 1 is never play me. 2 is do your best not to play me. 3 is filler. 4 is a card that is above average. 5 is strong. 6 is something that you always play in that faction. 7 is a reason to play that faction. 8 is a card that you definitely need to make fit. 9 is a card that like change your colors if you open it in pack 3. And 10 is a card that just wins the game. I haven't seen a single 10 in Eternal. So this is the full set review for the new set, Behemoths of Thera, in relation to draft. The goal is for this to be a guide to help you through your draft, to help you pick the right cards in the right order, to give a value to how high something should be picked. And today we are going to be covering the commons and uncommons from Time, Primal, and Justice. And since we have a lot to get through, I'm going to go through all the stats again very briefly, and we'll get right into it. We'll do the rares and revisit things next week. The difficulties have changed a little. I know a little. So the floor is the worst card a card will be. So like if you, in this case, is frequently if you miss your hunt, if you get the wrong part of the hunt that you need. And the ceiling is the best that card can be, because some cards will have a really low floor. For instance, a lot of the weapons cards, they just don't work if you don't have enough weapons. So if you have fewer than 6 weapons, they're going to be a low value. And the ceiling would be if you have a bunch of them and you have a bunch of good weapons, especially some of the rare ones. The effort is how difficult that is to get to bridge the gap between the floor and the ceiling. So deck building requirements, play styles, luck. Some cards just require a bit of luck, and some cards happen to be difficult to play with. But we're gonna go ahead and let me put you guys back on so people can see your comments. I will make it a point to address any comments made during a given card as soon as I pass that card. So we're gonna get right into it, and really quickly, Hunt is one of the new mechanics. Hunt is you will mill them a certain number of cards, put them straight from the deck into the discard, and if it's a power, it'll generate an advantage which you can use for a power of your own later on. If you hunt 2 power with this Cautious Mantis, then you will generate an advantage that is worth 2 power. If you hunt 2 of anything else, it grows. So that means that there's a 33% chance that it generates a power when you hunt, and it also changes the way graveyards interact, because every color has hunt, a few colors have more, but every faction will be putting cards from your opponent's deck into their graveyard. The second mechanic is Versatile. Versatile seems really simple, but it changes the way a lot of cards play. So like I used Mantis Claw as the example of Versatile because to me that is the quintessential example. If you play Mantis Claw on yourself and attack a unit, then it's just a burn spell. You are just dealing 3 damage to a unit, just like a relic weapon. If you play it on one of your units, something with flying or Aegis, then 3 additional power is very strong if you can get more than 1 hit in, but it's still pretty fragile. The market is back. There is a cycle of 5 delivery cards, and those 5 cards at Uncommon are impactful enough to change the pick order of cards in general. It means that cards that you would not normally main deck, but are very helpful in a specific situation in a minority of games, are now worth picking, which they weren't always. And there's a cycle of power sinks in each color. There's 3 cycles, and they're just good ways to use your power in the late game, which is important because hunting is going to generate a lot of additional power. The stats, there's 173 cards in the set. There are actually 4 sources of colors fixing, and a few sources in time that do some fixing. There's 106 units and unit creators, 29 of which have flying, 14 of which have Aegis. There are 14 burn spells that target players, and 17 cards with Nightfall. Nothing in Justice has Nightfall, and Justice is actually hurt a little bit by some of the Nightfall cards. And that's relevant because there are some factions that use Nightfall really well and don't pair well with Justice, and we'll be talking about those today. There are 10 sources of flat, reasonable card advantage, just cards that generate more than 1 card when you play them. 10 sources of healing, which there are cards that care specifically about healing. And there's only 1 card that steals, which is relevant to some very weird situations. In terms of unit size, we have 22 units with 1 health, 27 with 2 health, 29 with 3 health, 12 with 4 health, 8 with 5 health, 5 with 6 health, 1 with 7 health, and 2 with 8 health. And this is specifically just on the commons and uncommons. And we will be using that stats a lot to talk about removal. Removal is a very important part of any draft format in any game. There are 6 removal spells that deal 1 damage, or kill something with 1 toughness, or give something -1/-1. And that kills 21% of the commons and uncommons. There are 5 spells that deal 2 damage. It kills 46% of the common and uncommon units. 3 damage kills 73%. 4 damage kills 84%. And 5 damage kills 91%. Everything else... so killers... So there's like 1 card that is a killer 3 with Hunt 1. And that... I counted it twice. It is once in the 3 damage, once in the 4 damage. There are 4 cards that kill anything. There's some other situations. There's 1 card that stuns only at night. There's 3 cards, so there's a curse that stuns and keeps it stunned, and then there's 3 cards that just stun once. There's 8 weapons, 7 of which are versatile. All right, we're gonna get right into time. Time is very interesting in this set. So the time cards are generally larger units. They're just a little bit bigger than other things, and that ends up affecting the quality of the rest of what they do. There's a light healing sub-theme, and there's a light ramp sub-theme, all of which we're going to look to take advantage of. Here we go. All right, so the first time card is Amber Acolyte, and you can see where my font messed up. So this should be black, this should be white, and for somehow, when I did the find and replace, they got swapped. But only these 2 values. So I gave it a floor of 3 with a ceiling of 5 and an effort value of low. If this is a 3 cost 2/1 that draws a sigil, it's very strong. Being able to, like, it's not very strong. It replaces this up. A 3 cost 2/1 that draws a card, even if you know it's a sigil, is fine. If you are a deck that needs a lot of sigils, which is, if you're straight time, you may not need a lot of sigils. You may just be relying on Hunt. Then you can pick it a little lower. Like, you'll usually play this card, but you won't always pick it super high. But if you're a controlling deck, something a little bit slower, and you need to splash your colors, Amber Acolyte is a fantastic way to splash for, like, a Relentless Hair. Which, real quick, I do want to pull that up because I'll be talking about it later. Relentless Hair is the Time Fire dual faction card, and it's a great finisher. So, like, if you're just a regular time deck, time whatever, time Primal, time Justice, then you can put in a Fire Sigil and a few Amber Acolytes. Then you can grab that Fire Sigil for the Relentless Hair and use it as a finishing card. Heck yeah, Duo! That's because you're playing well. Be proud. Amber Beetle. So Amber Beetle is one of the most consistent of the Beetle cycle. I gave it an average rank of 4. The other ones will have higher or lower average ranks. But this one is going to be pretty consistent no matter how much it hits. Because some of the Beetles, if you play it in the late game, and if it's a 4 cost 2/2 that hits 2 power and you get a 2 advantage, it's not good enough. But if this one hits 2 power, you're okay playing that 2/2B and just accepting that you have 2 bodies in play. This only needs to hit once for it to be a great card on rate, because a 4 cost 4/4 you're pretty happy with. A 4 cost 5/5 is better, but a 4 cost 3/3 that makes a 2/2 flyer is also fine. It is a less impactful ultimate than some of the other Beetles, but it's still very good. Yeah, Duo, nice work. It's so difficult. I can't believe, I'm surprised at, I mean, hitting a Master's rank in Throne or Expedition is ridiculous to me. It's so many more games. Yes, Amber Beetle is a 3/3 base compared to the other ones. The time cards are all on, the time units are all on average a little bit larger than the other units. Beekeeper, card's very cool. I gave it an average score of 3 with a floor of 3 because it's usually going to play at that floor. And it's at a floor because it is 3 power, 3 toughness, 2 of which is flying, for 3 power. The effort on it is a little low. But if you are playing a really, like if you pick up some Hours of Kodash, there's a few cards at rare that will grow your whole team. And there are a few cards, like in Xenon, for instance. A Xenon deck will want that B and keep using that B, but they will be able to throw the 1/1 side of this body into lots of the sacrifice effects. So you can make this card better without a huge amount of effort, but it's better to already have those cards. So in terms of pick value, I gave it a 3. but you can easily get it up to a 5 in the right deck. And there are some decks, the 3 drop slot, the 3 power slot is very contested in this format. So you really do want to try and get your 3 power units at common that are relevant to your given playstyle. You want to try and go for a more synergistic deck rather than a raw power deck. So it's relatively low effort to get this card up to its ceiling of a 5, but you do want to think about how you take it. Because some decks want to prioritize Amber Acolytes. Some decks want to prioritize the Primal cards that give something flying. Some decks want to prioritize the Shadow 3-drop that shrinks something, or the Fire 3-drop that plays a weapon. There are other options for your 3s, so you don't need to pick your 3s so aggressively unless it's doing what you want, unless it is a high synergy 3-drop. So that is the thing to keep in mind when we talk about the other 3 power units. Canyon Lurker. So this card is sweet. I didn't see it at all in the preview, but I love it. I gave it a base 3 because it's fine as a 6 power 5/5, and it's fine if it's a 6 power 5/5 that you are playing on your opponent's end of turn. But if your opponent attacks with a 3/3 or a 4/4 and you get to eat it and then leave a 5/5 behind, the card is very good. 6 drop slots, like the 3 drop slots in this set, are very contested. So you want to try and get things that are synergistic. But if you are ramping, this is best when you are ramping or when you are a more controlling deck. Because we'll talk about more of them, but these double time influence requirements, 6 and 5 mana instant speed interaction pieces are also contested, but you can build a deck around them. And this Canyon Lurker is cool. Also, I love this art. It's just a huge lizard that is hiding. Cautious Mantis, the quintessential hunt card. This is a good card. It's going to fill your 5s a lot. A lot of the time it's going to be rares, but you're not... compared to the other hunt cards, at 5 power, you are less likely to use the hunt... on the Canyon Lurker? Yeah. It's deciding. But like, it's not after the caravan, it's just deciding whether or not it wants to deal with it. Cautious Mantis, the only reason Cautious Mantis isn't a higher rating is because when you hunt with Hunt 2, you are a lot more like this is usually going to be a 5 power 5/5, and that is totally fine. There's lots of good, compared to like the last set when Towering Terrazon was the best 5-drop, and you had like access to Cloud Scraper. Cautious Mantis is a little bit weaker, but you'll play this card often. 3 is not an unplayable. 1 is unplayable. You can block 4/4s and 3/3s, and it's best if you have a way to use the advantage should it generate an advantage. It's pretty devastating. This is one of the biggest differences in power, because when you hit 2 sigils and it generates an advantage of 2, it feels awful to play this as a 5-cost 4/4. The difference between a 5-cost 4/4 and a 5-cost 5/5 in this set is very big. Colony Steward. So I gave it a 4 with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5. Very simple average. A 3-cost 3/3 is good in this set. A 3-cost 3/3 with Valor attacks into the opposing 3/3 even if you're on the play, and it trades up with an opposing 4/4. It is a little bit more proactive than a lot of the other time cards, but being a little bit proactive when you have a lot of reactive cards is not a bad thing. Also, hi Bootsy. Giving everything else Valor enables 1 attack, but it doesn't turn everything huge. So if you have 5 1/1s and your opponent has 5 2/2s, then you have like an hour of Kodosh to pump your team. That feels great because you get to attack for 5 extra damage. But if you just give them all Valor, you're not attacking for 5 extra damage. You're just forcing through the 5 damage you had before. So it's great, but it's not broken. First Watch, card's bad. I gave it a 2 with a floor of 1 and a ceiling of 3. The problem is that if you are a dedicated Nightfall deck, then this is not the card you want. Paying 5 to gain 8 without affecting the board or without dealing with what your opponent is doing or committing something new to the board is not where you want to be. The Nightfall deck tends to want to be very aggressive, not necessarily aggressive in attacking, but aggressive in its costing of units. You need to be very proactive. So if this is just to enable Nightfall, it takes a whole turn. You're not going to be able to first watch and play something else, which is bad when you're drawing 2 cards. 8 health is a lot though. So the one reason that I think this card is still salvageable is for your market. This is a card you want to actively be picking for your market, because if you are at a stalemate, then gaining 8 and having each of you draw 2 cards is pretty nice. But you gotta remember, you're giving your opponent a card. So like if you are actively racing, you don't really want your 5-cost card just to gain you health, but it's not great. You usually don't want more than one copy of this card. There may be a healing Nightfall deck, but even so, there are better Nightfall cards. Like if you're playing this card means that your opponent will be able to use the Nightfall better than you, and that's a problem. Gentle Seeker. So I gave this card a floor of 2 because it's like the Lucky Prospector in the last set, but it scales much better into the late game. You really need that relic. Without the relic, the card's just not good enough. It drives me crazy that this font color changed. You really want this to be hunting every turn. But it's a little awkward because even if you have the turn 2 relic, most of the turn 2 relics die when this card comes in, and it would be higher if there were more good relics. So I may revisit this when I look at all the rare relics. And if you have some 2-cost relics that stick around, card's great. If you have some hours out of Unleashed, card goes up a lot. So it's got a high ceiling. If you open this in pack 4 after picking up 2 hours in Unleashed, great card. You want it to start growing immediately, and even if it's only growing 66% of the time, it's very strong. It is fragile for a whole turn. Like it can be Thunder Pop before you get the first hunt trigger, as opposed to... So like if this were a 3-cost 2/2 with hunt, your opponent could not Thunder Pop it before the hunt resolved. But this does give your opponent a chance of Thunder Pop before it hunts. But if it grows twice, it's a fantastic card. Even if you can get it hunting on turn 3 and it generates an advantage, still very good. Gnarled Ant. So this is a card I'm going to revisit too. It's really good if you need the healing. If you don't need the healing, it's not that aggressively costed. But you want this to be slightly more defensive because it's a nice defensive card. It trades up with lots of 5/4s and 6/4s. It's likely to be something that you summon to gain 3 health and then trade, and that's fine. Like it will often trade down, which feels kind of bad because at a 4/3 it trades with lots of 3/2s and 3/3s. So you want it to be like it's going to be filler most of the time, but it's a little bit better if you have a use for that health, and we'll get there soon to the cards that actually I think next. Nope, we're almost there to the cards that care about healing. And if you have those cards, this card gets great. The Hardy Snail, not usually worth running. It does have a total of 7 power, or 7 combined power and toughness. And if you can get some weapons on it, or you need the blocker, it's fine. Really, there's just better 4-drops. There are better 4 power costed cards. Usually you want this to be a 4/4. It blocks well, so if you have bombs, big rares, and mythics that cost a lot of power that you need to get to that point in the game, you can still play it. And if you are the kind of deck that grows a lot, so if you have a lot of weapons or cards that grow your units, it's a little bit better. But a 2/5 with endurance, the endurance is nice, but it's not easy to attack with a 2/5 because if your opponent has 2 3/3s, then they can double block without losing anything. Is not a great attacker, so the endurance doesn't do much unless you are otherwise increasing the power. So I gave it a floor of 2 and an average of 2 because that's how it'll usually play. But if you have a few ways to make it bigger, a few cards that maybe pump an insect, there is an Insect Lord. Card gets a lot better. It bothers me that they count a snail as an insect. Hive Delivery. So I gave it a 3 with a floor of 1 and a ceiling of 5. This one I think is a little bit better than the others. It is also a little bit harder to use. So there are more, like, there is a bigger toolbox of relevantly sized and relevantly timed units in time than some of the others. You will fill your market with relevant units that you don't necessarily want at a given time. But like if your opponent is flying, you want the Gnarled Ant. If your opponent is full of 2/2 ground creatures, you want the Hardy Snail. I love the market cards. I might be valuing them all a little high, but I like the Hive Delivery quite a lot. Hive Hexagon. This might be the best uncommon in the set. The healing is just good. Like in Cold Hunt, we had the Arcanum Seeker, and it was like fine. It was a 2-cost 4/4, which is very strong, but you couldn't enable until turn 3. It's not gain 4 or more. It's not gain 2 or more. It's gain any amount. And even over in the factionless stuff, there's good uncommons that heal 1. Like, I am convinced that the reason Veteran Strategist gives you 1 health back is just to enable the Hive Hexagon. So I gave it a floor of 3. The floor should probably be 1, honestly. Because if you don't heal, it's bad. But it enables relic synergies. And if you can heal, if you get 1/2/2 out of this without spending a real card, it's good. It's playable. It's not good. It's a 3. And if you get 2/2/2s out of this, it's a 5. And if you can get 3 2/2s or more, you just win the game. Like, this card is worth... So I gave it a floor of 1 with its healing of 7. But I put it at a 5 because if you pack 1, pick 1 this, you can treat it as a 7 because you can make sure to get all your healing. It's a really good comment. Like, it gets better and better and better the more you draft around it. And there's not just every color, every faction... That's not true. Shadow and Time and Justice all have a way to heal. And there's factionless ways to heal in this set. In small increments, but still. Speaking of which, Hive Stinger, fantastic way to heal. This should not be a floor of a 2 because if you play this as... So compared to other weapons, like we talked earlier about Mantis Claw. So Mantis Claw is a burn spell. It's a playable card, even if you're just using it as a relic weapon to play on yourself to kill something else. The downside is you have to pay some health to do it. But Hive Stinger, unless your opponent has a 5/2, they need to have a 6/2. It kills something with 2 toughness, which we learned earlier was a solid 46% of units. But lots of units, even like this Amber Beetle, hang on. The Amber Beetle makes a 2/2, and taking out the 2/2 is not terrible. But you can play... The versatility on Hive Stinger is huge. So it's not... You will likely gain health if you have to play it on yourself to kill a unit. But if you can play it on like a Happy Harvester, on a Hardy Snail, if you can play it on the Hardy Snail, now you've got a 4/6 that gains for every attack and blocks everything. If you can get it on a unit that attacks multiple times, that's a lot of healing. It's really hard to raise something gaining you 4 health every turn, especially if you gave it 2 extra power. And even getting on like... It enables the Hive Hexagon on its own. Even if you have no other units, you can just play it to attack to turn on your Hive Hexagon. It's one of the better time removal spells, especially on turn 3, because time gets better as the game goes on, but it's not got a ton of interaction before then. Hold at Bay. So I gave this a 2 with a ceiling of a 5, and it's usually going to be a 2. But if you open good rares, good bombs, you don't want to take this early. But if you are... It's a little bit awkward because if your opponent figures out you have a Hold at Bay, they only have to attack with 1 unit at a time. You can't play it if they're only attacking you with 1 unit. You have to create a situation with Hold at Bay, both where your opponent needs to be attacking with enough units to kill you, doesn't have the power to replay those units, and you have something useful to draw into. It's a weird... Yeah. Right. You can use it on 1 unit? I literally tried to use it on 1 unit and I wasn't able to. Oh, maybe I just couldn't target it. But like, there's so many units with comes into play abilities, with summon abilities. So I'm mistaken, I think. I'll have to double check that. But there's so many units with comes into play abilities that this is a very niche card. You have to be able to use the time it buys better than your opponent gets to use 2 additional ETBs. Like, think about the percentage of units that just have hunt. Like, that have already hunted when you get to Hold at Bay. I was at work, comment, so I don't want to say 100%. I was trying to use it on a single attack and I was not able to. But I was also at work. So it's it, which like I lost the game to Kazandra the other day because I couldn't target him with icicles to the face. I just couldn't drag it. So yeah, the card requires a lot of deck requirements. I gave it a ceiling of 5 because if you have, so I ran it twice today. The first time was like a general mid-range deck. It was really bad. But then when I had that 5-color deck with the relic, that not the relic, the sight, the 5-color sight, then it was amazing because I would just play Hold at Bays until I got the sight out, and the sight wins the game. So it is a build around compared to the yellows. I'm actually going to raise the effort value on that to high. This card takes some work. It's a lot of tempo, but it's strict card disadvantage. Honeycoat. This card's sweet. It's real bad, but it's sweet. I want this card to be good so badly. It's like if you're a very aggressive deck and then this is your removal, like it doesn't clear blockers if you're a very aggressive deck. It gives your opponent value if you are a controlling deck. If you're a mid-range deck, you can make it work. Like, again, it's not unplayable. See, I gave it a ceiling of a 5 because there are decks that use it, but it's a lot of work to use. Yeah, but you want other interaction. This is supposed to be an evaluation of the pick order. Like, this is not the hold up A you want. This card is so funny to me. I love this card. It's really bad. But like, if you can make it, like, if you make it work, like, you can get a 2-for-1, but you need it to be a 2-for-1 when you're already ahead. Because if you're attacking with 2 3/3s and your opponent blocks 2 3/3s, it's not going to do anything. So usually it's going to be a 1-for-1 because you're usually swapping the 6/5 onto the 5/5 and then the 1/1, so that's still a chump block. It doesn't actually enable you to punch through with anything. It's a removal spell that requires you to have 2 units in play, which is just worse than killer. But it's pretty cool also. Like, it's also, if your opponent suspects the honeycoat at all, they just won't block with 2 units. They'll just block one of them. Like, it's a win more card. You need to already be so far ahead for swapping 2 blocks to be relevant. But it's hilarious. This card is hilarious to me. Rendori. I'm very interested in that. I love that effect. I think it's so cool. There used to be a worst Magic cards ever list, and one of them was like the twin. I gotta find it, but it was a land that did this. Yes, so that's why I gave it a ceiling of a 5. Because, like, I will be taking this card when I have the time market card. That's why I like, so I gave the, I gave the Hive market a higher rank than the others. Also, hey Bear Broken, how you doing? I gave Hive Delivery, I actually just gave it a slightly higher ceiling because the cards you get out of time from your market are so funny to me. Like, grabbing Hold It Bay and a Honeycoat out of your market is awesome. It's really useful. Alright, up next is the Jackal King. So I gave this a 4, which I give that... Alright. Gaining health off of your bomb is very important. If you can, like, let's say 4 health. 4 health on average. That seems pretty reasonable when you're hunting. If you're gaining 4 health off your Jackal King, one of the problems with a 7-drop is you'll play your 7-drop, and then your opponent's already established and they fly over with their 2 flyers for lethal. Or they go around you. So that's the biggest thing, is when you play a huge unit and your opponent has 4 units in play, then they just sacrifice if they have 3 4/4s, they're going to sacrifice their 4/4 to punch through for 8 damage, and they're just accepting that the Jackal King will block one of them. But if you're gaining enough health to keep you alive, it's very strong. So the floor of this card as a 7 cost 8/8, and I put it as a 3, and the floor of this card is just a filler card. Like, it is a big unit that you play on turn 7. It is a 7 cost 8/8 with Overwhelm. Like, that closes the game. It's not always the close you want, but the fact that it gains health makes it a much higher ceiling. So it's a little bit of work to get, like, you want to be hunting. You want lots of Cautious Mantises and Beetles, and you do need to be very heavy time. 3 time influence is a lot, but I like it. It's a cool card. Like, the way time plays lends itself to a market better, because you want to be able to have access to more mid-range cards and more high-end cards as you get later into the game. But this is a good finisher. It keeps you alive a little bit, and it kills them. This plus the hair as a core of finishers for time is very strong. Last Light Infusion. So I gave this card a 3 with a floor of a 3, because it's usually going to play at the floor. And you can get it up to a 5 in a heavier Nightfall deck. This enables attacks. So assuming it doesn't win you a game that you're losing, it doesn't let you come back if you're way behind. But if you get to pump a flyer and put your 3/3 past their 4 drop, it's pretty good. It plays really well on curve. And if it's just... It does give your opponent an extra card to try and answer them immediately, but 3 is right where you want your Nightfall cards to be 3 or less, or be hugely impactful. And this is fine for the amount of impact it has. So you get to draw 2 cards on the following turn and rebuild your board because you just took a turn off from playing units to play this last Light Infusion. But even in the late game, it enables attacks. It is a pump spell, so you have to play with units and you have to already have them in play. I'm actually going to drop the 4 a little bit, but it will usually play at a 3. It's a cool card. I think this is a reprint. All right, so I did bump this up after talking to Comet. Because the question on Lumen Shepherd is how relevant is that stat size? Because altogether, this card is a 6 power 5/7 because it's Wisp plus a 4/6. But 6 toughness is huge. So 6 tough, 5 damage is where there are burn spells in this set that go all the way up to 5 damage. And being able to survive that is relevant. What you need for the Lumen Shepherd is to use that Wisp. So it's best in Xenon or Justice where you can, or even just Fire. Like if you're just putting weapons on the Wisp, that's fine. But you don't want this to be a 6 cost 4/6 that makes a chump blocker. Like it's still fine. If this is a 6 cost 4/6 that makes a chump blocker, that's why it's a 3. Like then it's vanilla. But if you can use the Wisp, then it's worth a 5. If you already have a few cards that use like Midnight Hunters, this card's good with Midnight Hunter, even though they both cost 6. Midnight Hunter is the 1 cost spell in Xenon that sacrifices a unit to shoot something for 3, or the weapons out of Justice. You can make this work in most colors. Pillardran is a great example, Bootsy. There are lots of things that use that Wisp, and it's worth a 5 when you can use that Wisp. If you take it first pick, look for ways to use that Wisp. It's fine at the floor of a 3, but Time has other big units if you're just looking for big units. Like Marison's Legacy. I think this might be the best uncommon for Time. It's almost always worth those 3 cards. Like, it's 5 power plus a 1/1 Death Touch that trades with something relevant, and you'll have lots of games where you play the Marison's Legacy and that your 1/1 Scorpion holds something at bay, where your 2/2 punches through, and your 3/3 also trades with a 4/3. This is just 6 power for 3 cards worth of bodies. In a set where you want to have lots of bodies in play. It is a very clean 3-for-1, and there are very few clean 3-for-1s in this set, Beard Broken. It's pretty cool. So the thing about Marison's Legacy is you will frequently have to treat it like a 7, 8, or 9 drop because of that 3-time influence. But first picking a Marison's Legacy is a very good reason to draft Mono Time, to force it. And Mono Time in this set looks a little different than in other sets, because Mono Time is actually time with a light splash using Amber Acolytes and your other fixing. So Mono Time isn't you run 15 time sigils, it's you run 12 time sigils and a Seek Power for a light splash and whatever else you're looking for. But you really get rewarded for being triple time because you get to play Jackal Kings and Marison's Legacies, which work very well together. Like Marison's Legacy and a Jackal King is just such a hard board to deal with. Moondial up next. So this is the only card in the set that I have lowered after playing with it. Because compared to every other card that gives Nightfall, this one doesn't do anything. You give your opponent... Nightfall is such a cool mechanic. Like, I love it. It's got a built-in handicap in that your opponent will always get the extra card off of Nightfall first. Giving your opponent Nightfall before you get to Nightfall without impacting any of the board in any way is bad. But if you are the heavy control deck, you have ways to gain health, you have a better late game, it's okay. This card is good when you pay 5 to draw a card 3 times. Right, exactly. At 2 cards, I don't think this Moondial is worth it. You need to get 3 cards out of it, or have a pile of Lucky Prospectors. There are cards that care about having relics in play. Not a ton of them, but enough that you will take Moondial sometimes. It's almost never going to be worth a first pick, though. I literally looked at this card and a removal spell, and I'm like, I think I need to play with Moondial. I think I need to see how fast this format is, and I lost every time I played it. Just like a real Moondial, Bootsy, that's right. Myrmidon Builder. Very cool card. So earlier today, the very first draft of the set, I first picked the 5-color site that you play 5 spells off of. and I had 3 of these Myrmidon builders just to grab the random sigils out of the deck. If this is a 4-cost 4/3 that doesn't get to attack, then it's a 3. It's not ideal. It's not a great stat size. If you get 1 attack off of it, there's a very good chance that your opponent will block with their 3/3 or their 4/4. And then it's just a 2-for-1. You just get 2 cards out of this. It doesn't play the sigil depleted, which means that if you play a turn 4 Myrmidon builder, or maybe even a turn 3 off a Lucky Hunt, then it attacks and you are suddenly ramped ahead. Going through time, if we just look at time as its own color, time has lots of good 4-drops, that hunt or ramp, and lots of good 6-drops. But the only 5 is really Cautious Mantis, and that's why it's so awkward. But time wants to make that jump from 4 to 6, and usually, most of them do that with hunt cards. But the Myrmidon builder specifically always jumps you from 4 to 6. Skipping that 5 is what time wants to be doing, and you're kind of just hoping to hunt 3 times and hit that 33% advantage rate to get that jump. But Myrmidon builder always does it, and it plays a random sigil, so it's usually going to be a time sigil, but it can be the other color you need. The fact that it's double time means that you want to prioritize it in the time deck, which is okay because time really wants to jump from 4 to 6 anyway. But if you get 2 or 3 attacks off of this, you're very happy. It's really cool. Oasis Seeker, very efficient. 2 cost 3/2. The thing about Oasis Seeker that I think is a trap is if you play the Oasis Seeker, so I gave it a 3 at a floor of a 3, and it's usually going to be a 3. Is you look at that healing and you think, I can race with this card. But generally it's just going to trade with all the 2-drops at common and uncommon, really trade. There's not a lot of 2-drops with only 1 power or that like don't have deadly. So it's not, it has to do something pretty significant for me to give it higher than the 3 at a 2-drop. Usually it's in the late game, but if you have a turn, this is the best way to turn on a turn 3 Hive Hexagon. So I will often first pick a Hive Hexagon and then start looking for as many of these Oasis Seekers as I can get, because it's a great 2-drop. It's great in the late game. It trades up with 4/3s like this Myrmidon builder. But you want to be able to use that health. You want that health to be relevant for it to be really strong. So I gave it a 3 with a ceiling of 5. It's not that hard to get it up to the ceiling of 5, but it requires other cards. So pack 1, pick 1, I'll usually look for something else. I like it. On the Prowl. So this one, I started at a 3, and then I'm like, oh wait, this is really good. And then I'm like, oh wait, this is really good. Giving something killer is strong. It lets you take out something a little bit smaller. I love the gamble of, like, let's say you have a 3/3 and your opponent has a 4/4. You give it a Prowl, and you hope to hit on both hunts to be a 5/5. On average, this is going to grant 1.6 health, 1.6 power, and 1.6 health. It's a good removal spell. Even compared to the other killer cards. So if you have like a Saddled Ceratosaur out of Cold Hunt, you wouldn't always want to play that to give something killer because it wouldn't always be worth the extra 3. But you can on the Prowl your 2-drop just to hunt and then use the killer a little bit later. It also works really well with recursions. Like, it's nice in a lot of decks. It's a very strong time removal spell, and it will usually play closer to the ceiling than the floor, but you do need units. It's not hard to have the units in time, but you do need them. Secluded Druid. So I gave it a 2 with a floor of a 2 because it'll usually play at that floor, but it's a good blocker. So we talked earlier, we're trying to ramp a little bit in time. Time wants to hit 6 power a little bit faster. Secluded Druid is a good way to do it. If time had better 5-drops, this card would be better. It's a solid blocker. If you have good rare 5-drops, card's good. You need the ramp to be relevant for this card to be good, because it's very hard to kill, and your opponent, all of the cards that actually just deal 5 damage don't really deal with this card very well. There is the Black Nightfall spell that kills something with power 4 or less that just cleans this up. But overall, it's a solid card. It's a piece of ramp. You want to know what you're ramping into before you play it. All right, Stargazing. The design on this card is fantastic. This is what I want to see in a Nightfall card. So this is a very proactive card. You want to play it to clear blockers, because obviously if you're on the defensive and your opponent plays it to and your opponent is attacking you, then Stargazing isn't going to be doing much. But in the Nightfall deck, when you want to be drawing extra cards, I talk a lot about how it's really important when you are the Nightfall deck to be able to play 2 spells in a turn. Stargazing is one of the spells you want to play. It gives you such a tempo advantage because you're both drawing so many cards, you're not likely to be able to play them all anyway. If it's consistently night, then your opponent is going to be consistently putting units down, which you then want to return. So this is a really cool card for the Nightfall deck. I wouldn't usually play it outside of the Nightfall deck because you can't return your own units. I'm actually going to drop the average score of this to 2 because I don't want to take this unless I'm already the Nightfall deck. But you don't necessarily have to be the Nightfall deck if you are aggressive enough. So like an aggressive Fire Time weapon deck with Stargazing is really nice. This is a build-oriented card. Stonefist Nomad. So I actually raised this from a 3 to a 4 because, like I said earlier, the 2-drops all tend to trade with each other. You want a 2-drop that will deal with your opponent's 3-2, or their 2-2 that deals double damage because they made a knight, or even their 2-1 that hunts and made a knight. Stonefist Nomad, I bumped up a whole rank because it's so good in the late game. Because if you have 8 power, you don't have to. It's so cool. I love big, bulky gauntlets on this kind of clothing. I think she's so cool. I like Butch Magnetic girls, which there's like 2, but being stone fisted is pretty close. But yeah, if you have 8 power, the threat of activation is huge because you get to attack. So there's 3 things that Stonefist Nomad really has going for it. The first is it trades with most other 2-drops. And you really need to be able to trade with other 2-drops if you're a mid-range deck. Like, if you are a mid-range deck, you need your 2-drop to kill their 3-2s. And the 2-drops are good. Like, Fire has a 2-mana 2-2 that gets double damage if you draw on 2 cards. It makes it Knight. It's awesome. But in the late game or the mid game, if you attack, they can't... If you have 8 power, they can't block the Stonefist Nomad because suddenly it's an 8-8. Or if it's in the extreme late game, you're just gonna activate it every turn and attack where 8 overwhelm every turn. Or if you have a 2-2 and if you have a Nomad and your opponent has a 2-2 and they have a pump spell in hand or a burn spell that they want to use in response to your activation, you can check for that burn spell with the Stonefist Nomad because they won't block unless they have that spell. Very cool card. It'll play really well. It's one of my favorite power sinks. Swift Subverter. This is a card that I may revisit and raise the ceiling on based on the rares and mythics. I actually need to make a note of that. So this card will get better if the rares and mythics are particularly egregious. Because if you hit something like a, don't know what all the summons are yet. But a 2-power 2-2 with Charge and Valor, it's a great card. A 2-power 2-2 with a Charge and Valor that could potentially take out a major threat before it comes down is really good. And there are a lot of things with Summon because there's a lot of things that summon and hunt. And there's a lot of cards that are aggressively... I'm going to raise the ceiling to 5. I convinced myself already. There's a lot of cards like, if you look at the Beetles. So there's a whole cycle of Beetles, like Amber Beetle. A 4-cost 3-3 is bad. But... it's on average a 4-cost 4.6 or a 4-cost 4.3. Yeah, that's right. A 4-cost 4.3. And you silencing it, you get to shrink it, you take out the overwhelm, you take out the B. So hitting a beetle with it is awesome, and the beetles are going to be everywhere, but even hitting like a cautious mantis turns it into a 5-cost 4-4. That's pretty bad. There's a fair number of summons at the common and uncommon, which is enough for it to be a 4. But it's really good all around. It's hard to block too, especially on turn 2, because like I was just talking about how important it is for your 2-drops to trade with opposing 2-drops. And this does not trade with the Swift Subverter. Tending the Hive. So I gave this a 4. It's just a 2-for-1. Okay, I lowered the floor from a 3 to a 2 because I lost earlier today because I whiffed Tending the Hive, which I did not think was possible. You have to hit 4 spells and relics for it to whip on Tending the Hive, but it's usually going to be a 2-for-1. You're limited on how many of these you can run because if you're playing 4 of them, like in the late game, it's going to be worse than a Bren's Insight because you won't need that power. But as long as you are building a mid-range or a late game deck that consistently needs power, which is not hard to do because of cards like the Stonefist Nomad that you want you to get to 8 power, it's still going to be pretty strong. There's not that many 2-for-1s in this set, but Time has a few, and this is a very good one. Wary Distributor. So, The reason that this card isn't higher is because it's bad on turn 2. This is a late game card. It's very good in the Nightfall deck because the Nightfall deck wants to play multiple spells. And it's good if you have flyers and double damage and unblockable things to go with it. Or if you have lots of Xenon cards that let you do something by sacrificing a unit. Plus 4/4 is big. It enables an attack that you may not have had otherwise. But it's not good on its own, and you have to think about how you're playing with it. So I gave it a floor of a 2, but some decks really want it, particularly aggressive Nightfall decks. Wormstone! So I almost cried earlier because I played a Wormstone and then played a spell, and my opponent ruined it in response. Like, they played the card Ruin on it, and I'm like, they were bronze, and I'm like... Then I did it again, and played another Wormstone, and then played an advantage, and he ruined it a second time! And I'm like, who main decks 2 ruins, and who keeps a hand with 2 ruins in them? But otherwise, pretty neat all around. A 4 cost, you should think of this as a 5 cost 7/7. That doesn't do anything until turn 6, but that's still a fine rate, because if you have advantages, the card advantage, then you can play a Wormstone and then you spend an advantage just to trigger the Wormstone for a 7/7, and that's pretty good, but it takes a bit of setup. And if you have just general spells, you'll usually be able to trigger the Wormstone the turn after you play it. It's a little bit weak off the top, but that rate on a 7/7 is still very good. Yes! There are enough cheap spells that Wormstone is good in this set. It just takes some work. It's not a free card. Yeah, it's true nostalgia. I used to be famous for whipping collected companies in my 36 creature decks. More than once. Alright. So, again, I'm going to just drink some water, and we will move on to Primal. Time is very interesting in this. Time is a little bit more vanilla than we've seen it in the past. But that is not a bad thing at all, and that doesn't mean it's not interesting. We're going to move on to Primal in just a sec. Also, hey Alba, thanks for all your help with this. Alba was very helpful in getting these slides together. I feel bad because he picked out a great background that I really wanted to use, but it kept changing the color of my fonts for some reason. So, for the rares, I will be using a different background, and I will have more time to get the fonts right. I forgot how uniform Primal starts out on. Primal starts out very uniform, but I think it has the most... It jumps around a lot. There's a lot of variability in how Primal plays in this set, which is cool. That makes for a good set. You can judge how good a set it is by the average distance between the floor and the ceiling. That's the case for most games. Excuse me. Alright. On to Primal. Primal has lots of flyers, lots of really cool situational removal, and a lot of different things you can do. Not as much raw power. So, this Aerial Rescue Team is a good example. I would put Aerial Rescue Team higher if there weren't that fire card that deals 2 damage to a flyer. But this card blocks badly, and it gets blocked by so many different things that it's annoying. And it dies to a huge number of the burn spells. But it's not unplayable. You will use it often. You will still play Windrake. You just won't be picking it first. This is the kind of card you end up with late in the pack when you are Primal. And it's the kind of card... They're just better 3s. Like, it's fine. But 3 is a competitive slot here. And this doesn't do anything particularly well. Unlike this one. Apprentice Ranger. So, these are very similar cards. I think Apprentice Ranger is significantly better, and I will be taking it over the other one often, because there's not a lot of 2-power things that hunt. And the advantage, oh, sorry, Quebec. Good. I forgot about the DM. It'll have to be next week, Quebec, because this is a dense day. So Quebec redeemed coaching, which I'm very excited to do. I can help you. I will always help you, Quebec, if you just want to hang out in Discord and do it. But on stream, it'll have to be next week, just because this weekend is so packed and full of magic. This is gonna wipe me out. The set review always wipes me out. Apprentice Ranger, very cool card. Because if this is a 2-power 2/2 flyer, you're very happy. But compared to the other cards that hunt, having 4 power on turn 3 is way better than having 6 power on turn 5. So if you happen to... It's harder to miss with the Apprentice Ranger on turn 2. In the late game, I'm looking forward to coaching you, Quebec, because not a lot of people redeem it for Eternal. But yeah, we will find a time, okay, buddy? I'm very happy. I'm excited that you redeemed that. Apprentice Ranger. It's usually going to be a 2-cost 2/2 flyer. If it's a 2-cost 1/1 flyer, that gives you an advantage. That's solid. It's a little bit of work, and it's not great in the late game off the top. But a 2/2 flyer off in the late game off the top is usually going to do enough. Arcane Stinger. I went back and forth on this one a lot. Because the 5-cost 4/4 with Aegis is fine. Like, we used to play the one with Inscribe, and usually you'd want to try and get that down as a unit. Ideally, you want this to come down on turn 4 because you played an advantage. So if you grab an advantage off this Apprentice Ranger and if you have enough Hunt, this card gets a lot better. If you have enough cheap spells, this card gets a lot better. But if you are just don't always try to get a card out of this. That's the important bit. Because if you don't have another 5-drop, don't wait to get the card. Just play your 5-drop. Play your 4/4 with Aegis. You need units down. Taking turns off in this format feels so bad. Like, you can take one turn off sometimes, but if you take multiple turns off for the Stinger, it's not great. I gave it a filler rating because it is not as easy as it has been in other sets to get that second spell. And if you are playing usually this will come down on turn 7 to get the card out of it. And a 7-cost card that draws a card that is a 4/4 with Aegis is fine without being great. Blind Storyteller. So I had this at like a 3 because I had this at a 2 because it was always kind of fine, and then I realized that we don't have Inscribe anymore. And one thing, so I play a lot of Magic, and in Magic, when you have to run extra land, you want more looting. You want cards that discard cards that draw a card. The Blind Storyteller is better in a deck that necessitates running more power. So like a more controlling deck wants Blind Storyteller because they want to be at 19, 18 power, and the Blind Story helps prevent flooding. It's a pretty cool card. It's best if you have cards that care about discarding, or if you're in a more controlling deck, don't play it in your aggressive deck. It's okay in mid-range decks, but is it worth? There is enough removal in this format to play a control deck without a bomb. Like, you usually want bombs in a given format, but the removal is pretty good, and it kills a lot of the relevant threats. Blind Storyteller lets you play all those removal spells and play cards that you may not run quite as many of. It's also nice if you have a deck where you're really trying to get a lot of market, but you only got 1 or 2 deliveries. When you only got 1 delivery or 0 deliveries, you can still play those cards and then pitch them to a couple Blind Storytellers. It plays pretty well, surprisingly. Cobalt Acolyte. Card solid. I consider it to be a superior pick to this aerial rescue team, even though it's frequently going to just be a Windrake. It's a little bit fragile, but giving any unit flying is really nice. There's a lot of huge units that are just missing a little something, and it lets you have game states where you play like a 3/3 and a few units on it. I gave it a 3 average because it's usually going to be just a Windrake, but it's a Windrake that's good the whole game. Is a Windrake that's still good off the top of your deck really late because you can give your 5/5 flying or your 4/4 flying and either block or start punching through. Cobalt Beetle. I think this is the best Beetle. It's close. The Beetles are very good. I gave it a floor of a 4 because a 4-cost 3/3 with Berserk that draws 2 cards later on is fantastic. Drawing 2 cards is so good. The time one makes a 2/2 flyer, but having your 4/4 that attacks twice a turn, draw 2 cards, is so good. And this one gets the most out of recursion. So if you play it and hunt 2, draw 2 cards, recur it, hunt 2, draw 2 cards again, you're not losing that game. This card's very good. It's not the best blocker compared to the others, so you want to have other blockers down. But pick Cobalt Beetle high. I gave it the highest rating out of all the Beetles. Corrosive Hopper. Card's kind of bad. It's an 05 flyer, so it will feel like a 2/5 flyer when you are aggressive because you can keep punching through and it'll keep dealing 2 damage, and it sort of gives something else that 2 power. But the thing is, if this were like an actual 2/5 flyer, then it could block 2/2 flyers and kill them. It's a defensive card that does not discourage attacking. If you can grow it, it's very good. If you can get a few extra points of power on it, it's really good. But you don't want to have to jump through hoops to make your 5 power creature bigger. That's true, and that's relevant. I don't think that's like I don't think that bumps the rating up enough. Like saying that your killer units deal 2 damage is nice, but how often is this better than a 5 cost 4/4 or a 5 cost 3/2 flyer? Like it's fine. You want this card will frequently play like a 2/5 flyer, and sometimes you'll feel really good because you'll get that last 2 points of damage in. Yeah, but if you have some unblockable creatures, you can make this work. And you have to have flying blockers. You have to have blockers in the air in this format. So like this is not the flying blocker that you want, but it's the flying blocker you'll have to play some amount of the time. Here's another bad card. Daring Leap's pretty bad. Give one of your units flying and it hunts. So if it kept the flying, this card would be relevant. It would be strong. But like it's not worth a whole card to give something 1.2 power permanently and flying once. And it's not the kind of trick, like if this were a fast spell, it would be good. If this cost 1 less power, it would be good. If the flying was permanent, it would be playable, but not good. If this were a fast spell, I'd play so many of this. But it's just not quite good enough because you can whiff on it. You can give a unit flying and mill 2 sigils and it's just not going to do anything. Deepwater Lurker. So I gave this a 3 with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 4 because you don't want your killer says this unit can also be a removal spell. You don't want a removal spell that deals a variation between 3 and 4 damage. You want your removal spell to deal 3 damage or you want it to deal 4 damage. And if this deals 3 damage for 5 power, that's pretty bad. If it deals 4 damage, like if this kills a unit and remains behind as a 3/2, then it's pretty good. Or even as a 4/3, then it's pretty good. So like this card is good when you hit the hunt and throw your 4/3 at their 2/2 or their 2/3 and then have a 4/3 left behind. But it's so hard to get a whole card out of this. This is the card that this is the biggest whiff on hunt in this set. Losing the hunt on the Deepwater Lurker makes it so much worse. I still gave it a 3 because you still need removal and it's still a unit. But like, this is not a good one. I'm going to drop the floor to a 2. It feels so bad to miss the hunt on this, especially when you need to kill something. Fissure King. This card's sweet. So the floor is a 2 because you need to have some Aegis in your deck. If on turn 4 you don't have Aegis and you play this as a 3/2 flyer, you're fine with it. It's still a fine card. If you draw it in the late game and you don't have the Aegis, then it doesn't feel as good. Because the thing about the Fissure King is there's a lot of locusts in this set. There's a lot of 2/2 flyers. Even right here, there's a lot of 2/2 flyers. Apprentice Ranger. At common, every color has a convenient way to deal with the 2/2 flyer. Even fire, which usually has issues, has the 3-drop that shoots something for 2 with flying. Which I actually am after evaluating all the primal cards, I'm raising that fire shooter. But if you get to draw 2 cards off of this, there's lots of 1/2s with Aegis. It's not that hard to include a few. The reason I gave it a high effort value is this card, if you have 3 other Aegis things in your deck, it's probably a 4 or a 5. If you have 5 or 6 Aegis, if you have some Zealot's Inquisitions, there's lots of 1/2 soldiers with Aegis and Justice that you don't mind just sacrificing the Aegis, then this card's great. You really want to get those 2 cards, but giving up 1 Aegis to draw 2 cards is a great deal, especially on a relevant body afterwards. It's a little too fragile to play if you're not getting those 2 cards. Yeah, so Primal seemed bad at first because all the bad cards were at the beginning, and now we're getting all the good cards. This is one of the best counter spells I've ever seen. Forceful Interruption. So the fact it has draw a card attached to both modes, which are both relevant modes. Because if you get to, I think one of the traps people are going to run into is your opponent, you'll attack with your 3/3 flyer, they'll block with their 2/2, and then they will pump their 2/2, and people will counter the pump spell. But you have the option. You can counter the pump spell to make sure that your unit wins the combat, or you can stun their unit out of the combat if that's not something you care about. This card is always it's a 1.5 for 1 on average. But if you're just negating an enemy fast spell, which there's lots of good removal spells that are fast spells, then it's just a 2-for-1. Card is really strong and better than like a backlash because it doesn't get stuck in your hand as long as you're attacking. The only time it's bad is when you're on pure defensive. So like it's best in a deck that has other options for being defensive. Card though, I think this is so cool. So what's happening here is the bird like the bird. I guess they're just two guys fighting, and the bird is like, "I'm here now," bam, and grabs him in the middle of the fight. Love it. Hard lesson, very good card. Draw 3 cards. This card, a card would be tough to play if it weren't a fast spell. And the fact that you can play it on their end step, you can leave up. There's lots of like, there's a Justice card, destroy an attacking creature. It combos really well with this time card that we were talking about. That, where'd it go? Hold at Bay. So Hold at Bay and Hard Lesson are going to, they work really well together because Hold at Bay is card disadvantage. You're resetting cards, but you can hold both of these up and play whichever one is relevant. This one is a very strict 2-for-1, but frequently you're just going to be pitching a power in the late game, and it's even better. It's good, clean card advantage. Oh my god. Oh my god, you're right, Bootsy. Yeah, that's my new headcanon. That's what's happening. Icequake. Card's just bad. I remember the first time I saw this, I thought it said deal 3 damage to each enemy unit and the enemy player. And I'm like, this is awesome. So I drafted 4 Icequakes the first time I drafted Unleash. My very first ever Unleash deck had a playset of Icequakes. And then I played Icequake and killed myself. Like, I literally just swiped my board. The problem with Icequake, so it does kill a lot of units, but when you're paying 7 power to wipe the board, if it's only dealing 3 damage, you're not going to wipe the board. Your opponent is going to have units that survive the Icequake, and you can't Icequake and Thunder Pop in the same turn because you can't Icequake and Thunder Pop in the same turn because you're spending 7 power on your Icequake. Like that, Bootsy. It is playable compared to the other set because of Hunt. Because if you can hunt a bit and ramp a bit and play cards that survive this, then it works. But it's still not good. It's only going to be a 4, and I don't want to base my whole... I don't want to change the construction of my whole deck to get to a 4 on something. So, like, just as an example for the rating system, there are some rares that'll be a floor of 1 and an average score of 2 with a ceiling of, like, an 8 or a 9. Like that 5-color sight. The 5-color sight has... The ceiling on that card is an 8 or a 9. With a high deck building effort because you have to be 5 colors to play it. And that's worth putting the effort into building your deck around it, but Icequake is not. If you have to already meet all those requirements I just listed, units that survive, opposing units that don't, ramp to play it before turn 7, and double Primal, then you can play the Icequake, but don't make your deck that way just for the Icequake. Alright, Icicle Marksman. So here is a much higher ceiling than the Icequake, which is much easier to reach. I still gave it a 2 on average because it's a lot of work. The decks that want to play this card, so Icicle Marksman is good when you stall out the game and are pinging your opponent to death. But a 4-cost 1/3 does not help you stall out the game. So you need more than just this. You need a lot of spells, you need a lot of removal, and you need this to not be your only source of damage. 1 damage at a time isn't very good. But pretty soon we'll get to a card that I do think makes Icicle Marksman a little bit better. I don't think it's good enough on its own, but there are cards that make it playable compared to the Icequake. I gave it a really high ceiling. I think you can build a good Icicle Marksman deck. You just need a lot of card draw and a lot of cheap removal. Insectomorph. Floor of 2, ceiling of 4. It's a reasonable removal spell. The art is sickening. But it lets you kill any unit with 2 spells. It lets you burn somebody out for a little bit. It lets you turn a relevant body into a blocker. It's a little bit of work. You have to sacrifice a unit for it to be good, or sacrifice a spell for it to be good. So it's usually going to be... It's an inherent 1 for 2. 1 for 2? No, that doesn't work. It will always cost 2 cards to do your thing with Insectomorph, but that doesn't mean it's unplayable. It has lots of good places. The Thry Darkstalker. Bad card unless you're the Nightfall deck. Then it's a great card. This is one of the better Nightfall innate. Like, it is both a Nightfall enabler and Nightfall payoff. You need a bunch of other Nightfall cards to make it work. There's a very good Primal Time Nightfall deck. There might be a good Primal Fire Nightfall deck, but I know there's a good Primal Time Nightfall deck. Lightning Strike kills 84% of creatures. They have to be of units in the set. They do have to be attacking. It's consistent. I guess it's a little worse if your opponent has a bunch of pump spells, but the pump spells in this set are not great. There's only a few of them, and they're almost all Injustice. So you can kind of time what the pump spells are that are coming. Because most of the time, Justice has most of the pump spells that actually keep something alive. Fire's pump spell only gives +3/+1, so it doesn't let a lot of things survive the Lightning Strike, and you can time around what the Fire pump spell is. And we'll go through the Justice pump spells as we get there. They're a little bit stronger, but there's surprisingly few of them. There's no like Finest Hour or Saddle Up. Nothing quite like that. So Lightning Strike is a little bit better because there's fewer ways to just counter it. And 4 damage is better than it's been in a long time. Living Reflection. I think this card is one of the cards that makes the Icicle Marksman a lot better. It's very cool. It's just, you have to already have something in play. But there's a lot of units that get a lot out of being copied. So if it's like a Beetle, if you play a Cobalt Beetle and then copy it and hunt, then the new copy hunts 3 times. If you have the something with Killer, it's good. If you have Arcane Stinger, it's inherently strong. It just replays itself. And this card, the Corrosive Hopper, is made a lot better by the clone and hunt. It's a cool card. I think it plays well. You don't want this. You need to make sure your deck is full of 1, 2, 3, and 4 drops to make the Living Reflection strong. But then it's strong. Nocturnal Glider. This is another card that really wants the Nightfall deck. Because a 4/2 on the ground is bad, and a 4/2 on the air in the air is fantastic. And you can sort of control whether it's in the air or not, which means that if you expect your opponent to shoot it for 2 with the fire unit, you can wait a bit, but it doesn't have to attack unless it has flying, which is pretty neat. So I gave it a floor of 3 with an average of 3, because that's how it'll usually play, because it'll be a 4/2 that hits for 4 and then trades up. But it does... Oh, I love the card. I gave it a 4. 4 is good. 4 is pretty good. Like, 4 means I'll take it over a lot of stuff. Nocturnal Glider is a really cool card. You want to be the Nightfall deck, but it's a giant flying squirrel. Good for it. Ominous Cocoon. This might be the best common in Primal. I need to take a quick look, but I'm pretty sure this is the best common in Primal. There's lots of uncommons that are as strong as it, but yeah. This is the best common in Primal. Because it is a Nightfall 1-drop. So, Nightfall, I've said before, I'll say it again, you need to be able to play multiple spells, relevant spells, that stop opposing attackers for your Nightfall to be better than their Nightfall. But it doesn't trigger Nightfall on turn 1 when your opponent gets to use it to make more options. It triggers Nightfall when you want it to trigger Nightfall. A 1-cost 0/4 survives so much, blocks so much, and then becomes a relevant flyer that triggers Nightfall. Very good card, plays a lot better than it looks. Playing with it feels great. Playing with it feels great, playing against it feels awful, and suddenly you find yourself, oh shoot, I have to use an actual removal spell on my opponent's 0/4 that they played on turn 1 after it stopped 9 damage from my 3/3s. Take it high, take it often, and thank me later. Pheromone Flytrap. I gave it a floor of 4 with a ceiling of 7 and an average score of 5. It's a little bit of work, but a 7 cost, it's easy to get an opposing unit to die. And Berserk is strong. Like a 7 cost 4/6 with Berserk is almost good enough on its own. But the upside of playing carefully leading up to the Flytrap is awesome. If you have a 4/4 and a 3/4 out, it's really good. You get to kill 2 small things and be left with a 4/6 Berserk. It's a really good card. It does well when you recur it, and it's really hard to deal with for everybody. Read the Stars. You only want this in the Nightfall deck. Don't just cram it in. A 2-power card that you draw 2 cards and your opponent draws 1 card is bad. But this is one of the best ways to keep Nightfall moving, because it is Nightfall and it gives you more ways to trigger Nightfall, and it's a cheap way to turn on Nightfall. So great in the Nightfall deck, bad otherwise. There are decks that care about playing spells that want the cantrip, but be careful with it. You don't want to give your opponent cards. Like, you need to make sure if you're giving your opponent cards that you can use those cards better than them. Shining Shell. I actually came up on this one. There's a lot of good cards that take the Aegis well. There's a lot of good cards that want to be a 1/5, and your worst case scenario card on Shining Shell, like, you can still kill 21% of units, a lot of them are relevant, and keep the Aegis. It's very good. It also gets a lot out of Recursion and Warcry, just making it a little bigger. Sparrow Augur. Card's fine. It's a 3-cost 2/3 until it wins you the game. I love 3-cost 2/3s that win you the game. If you can get, it's your whole team. So you play this as a 3-cost 2/3, block your opponent's 2-drops. Chances are they'll kill it, or you'll have to trade it off. But a 3-cost 2/3 is almost good enough. Like, it's not great, but it's filler. It's a 2. And then suddenly you hit 8 power, or you hit 5 power with 3 advantages because your hunts went just so, and you win the game. Giving your team flying is not something to underestimate. I gave it a 3 with a floor of 2 and a ceiling of 5. Storm Watcher. Now this is this is Ice Storm. So, like, Hailstorm, shoot, I didn't include it, but Hailstorm deals 3 damage to each unit, which means that this is Icequake, the 7-cost spell that deals 3 to everything, but you get an 0/5 out of it, and you can play it as an 0/5 in the early game to block if you need it, and it has Aegis. You lose the Aegis if you Hailstorm, but still, it's so cool. Wait, you don't lose the Aegis if you Hailstorm, but your opponent can't kill it because it's your spell. I gave it a floor of 2, but the floor should be a little bit higher because a 3-cost 0/5 with Aegis is a good blocker, but you can't cram it into just any deck. Like, this is a mid-range and control card. It's not a more aggressive card, and it's at odds with a lot of what Primal wants to be doing. But if you have, flyers on turn 2 and turn 4 and Stormwatcher in between, the Stormwatcher holds the ground while the flyers do the rest of the work, and it is just good in between. Like, if you draw it in the late game, it's still very good. Soggy Sabretooth. I actually went back and forth a lot on this card, and I'm ready for somebody to tell me that I'm wrong. On average, this is going to be a 6-power 5/5 that returns 1 power. And that's just fine. There's better things to do with 6 power, but if you can get some recursion, if you can put it back in your hand and hunt again, if you can return it from your discard pile and hunt again, or if you care about milling your opponent out, then it's solid. I did not think it was possible to mill my opponent out until I started recurring that frog. And if you can recur the frog a few times, then the Stalking Sabretooth will help you mill your opponent out. It's a cool card. It's not the 6-drop you want, but you'll play it. Thick Hide. This card is a pretty clean 2-for-1. This is what I always wanted. The Unleash card that gives it health and puts a copy in Hydrate. This is what I always wanted Hydrate to be. It will keep a unit alive and draw a card. It's not crazy, but it's a good trick, and it cleanly counters the deal 4 damage to a unit. There's a lot of deal damage to units in this set, and being able to survive a combat or survive a trick and draw a card is strong. You do have to time it, and it can be difficult to leave 2 power up on your opponent's turn, but it's still solid. I lied earlier. Thundershot's the best Primal common. 3 power for 3 damage, kills nearly every unit that isn't an 0/4 on turn 3. 3 damage in general will kill. I don't remember the stat. 3 damage will kill 73% of all creatures in the set. That is absurdly high. And at 6 damage, will kill 94% of all units in this set. You can aim it at your opponent's face. You'll have situations where you're sitting there with 2 Thundershots, just playing units and attacking, and then suddenly your opponent is like, oh, I'm gonna die if I take this hit. If you're a Primal deck, just hold 2 power in your hand, and your opponent will have to block badly, just on the off chance that you have 12 damage for 6 power in your hand. This card might need a nerf. Like, this card might have to be nerfed to deal 5 damage if you have 3 or more units. Yeah, Stormwatcher does that. So This or the Moth. The Moth is the best common unit. The Cocoon is the best common unit. Thundershot, like, first pick Thundershot. Be Primal for Thundershot. It's so good. Like, the floor of this is you have no units and you're just dealing 3 damage to things with it. And 3 power for 3 damage is good enough in this set. That, as an aside, also takes Soulfire out of Unleashed. Twilight Lady. Card's fine. You don't want your 4-drops in your Nightfall deck. Like, this is, if you are the Nightfall deck, this is your curved topper. And that's kind of awkward because 4-drops are pretty strong in this set. It's fine. It's not something you want to play. You will play a couple copies in the Nightfall deck. Wilderness Delivery. Slightly lower, but a little bit easier to use than the other Primal card, than the other deliveries. Just because the cards... Yes. Wilderness, that's a very good point, Beard Broken. Don't be careful when you play your Thundershot. Don't let your opponent's removal spell 2-for-1 you because they kill one of your units in response. That doesn't change the rating, Beard Broken, but it is really important to note. So thank you for that. Wilderness Delivery. So the reason that Wilderness Delivery is worse on average than the other deliveries is that the disparity is higher. Like, you don't want to put a Thundershot into your market. You might put a Sabertooth into your market, but like, it's pretty clear whether the card needs to be in your market or in your deck in Primal compared to the other colors. But sometimes you'll have like Icequake. Icequake is a fine card to pull out of your market. There's just not that many Primal cards that you want in your market compared to in your deck. Winter's Grasp. It's really good in the Nightfall deck. It's really bad if you're not in the Nightfall deck. That's it. If you're the Nightfall deck, then you take this aggressively, and this is your primary removal spell, and it's just devastating because your opponent... You want the Nightfall deck to create situations where your opponent has a 5-drop and a 6-drop and a 7-drop, so they spend their turn playing a 5-drop, and then you spend your turn playing a Winter's Grasp and a 3-drop, and they spend their turn playing a 6-drop, and you spend your turn playing a Thundershot and a 3-drop. But it's bad outside of that, so don't try and just slide it in as removal in your non-Nightfall Primal decks. Alright, on to Justice. I just need to refill my water. I will be right back. While I'm gone, I'm going to leave up... How about the removal slide? I feel like that's really useful to have up. Or we can do the stats. Stats! Alright, be right back. I'm back. Let's continue. Alright, so Justice saved it for last. I gotta be honest, I had to rush everything after S. So I'm confident my rating's up to S, and we may change a few things as we get to T. Alright, Auric Weaponsmith. Floor of 2, ceiling of 5. You want to be the weapons deck. You don't want this to be a 4-cost 3/3. Aglamar, thanks for the follow. Really appreciate you, buddy. So you don't want this to be a 4-cost 3/3. If this is a 4-cost 3/3 that grows 1 weapon, it's okay. I'd still only put it at a 3. You can pretty cleanly give this another point rating for each weapon you expect to play. That's not weapon in your deck. That's weapons total that you play while the weaponsmith is out. Because it doesn't pump the weapons in your hand. It only pumps the weapons when you play them. So you want 5 or 6 weapons for this card to be good, but then it gets pretty good. So there's, like the Nightfall deck, this is part of the weapon deck. The Nightfall deck and the weapon deck require the most synergy. So get your rare weapons and enablers first, and then you can pick up your common and uncommon weapon enablers. The pick order on those has to be rare payoffs or very strong common and uncommon payoffs, weapons, then uncommon and common weapon payoffs. So this is the third in that pick order. But you can start picking it at that ceiling of a 5 as soon as pick 7 or 8. Ballista Marksman, what the hell? This card is fantastic. This card is so good. 3-cost 2/3 is almost good enough on its own. We talked about that earlier. But it's better. It feels like the banner out of Cold Hunt. The 3-cost banner that makes a 3/3. If this were a 3/3, it would be flat better than it. But giving a unit flying and as minimum +2/+2, but more likely +4/+4, +5/+5, this card breaks stalemates wide open. It's a very strong card. Pick it aggressively. Beneath Notice. This is a cool card because so I gave it a floor of a 3 because your worst case scenario on Beneath Notice is you cycle it. You just play it to replace itself later. Usually you'll be able to get 1 good combat out of it, just your 2/2 plus their 2/2. Beneath Notice lets you draw a card, but it's got lots of little incidental values. So at common, there are multiple. One of the most important shadow cards in this set is Deadly Parasite, the 1/3 with Death Touch, or with Deadly. And being able to shrink not more than 1 of Deadly Parasites, because people will stack Deadly Parasites out of the shadow deck, and being able to shrink all of them at the same time is very strong. Winning 1 combat and drawing a card and popping all the opposing Aegises is also relevant. And there's lots of weird situations where, so like in other sets, your opponent, so if your opponent has 4 1/2s, and then they use an Hour of Grodoth, then they are attacking you for 10. But if they give their whole team Valor, and they're still only attacking you for 5, and Beneath Notice clears that, it's better than it looks. Blockade Guard. Card's fine. A 4-cost 3/3 with Valor is a 3. If you get to disable a relevant attacker, then it's solid. If this stunned, it would be a lot better. But it doesn't stun, it just prevents the attack. So it doesn't even exhaust. So it doesn't enable any of your attacks. All it does is prevent 1 opposing attack. So it's fine in the mid-range decks, but it doesn't auto-go into every Justice deck. And there are just better options for 4-drops. I gave it a 3 on average. Bounding Courier, I gave it an average of a 4 because it does the job that a 2/2 needs to do in this format. It's a 2-cost. There's very few. Wording's a little mixed up on Ballista. Yeah, you're right. That's so weird. Why did they? That's really odd. All right, so Bounding Courier on turn 2 does the job of trading with opposing 2/2s. It trades with the Stone Fist, it trades with the 3/2s. There's very few, all the 2/3s in this set cost 3 power, which is a little bit odd. There's very few 2 power 2/3s in this set. But the Bounding Courier on turn 2 stemmies aggro, like you get to block things, and it is really good off the top in the late game. Just making something bigger for 1 attack is really strong. Call of Freedom. This I gave a 3. It would have been much stronger in most other sets. But in this set, the decks that want this card want weapons in that slot. It takes up the slot of a weapon or a relevant unit. It doesn't give flying, which I just think is odd because the art has wings. But 3/3 Lifesteal and Warcry is solid. Like, it's still a playable card. It's still a good card. But it's difficult to find the room for it. There are cards in Justice that care about playing spells, and it's pretty strong in those decks, which is why the ceiling is so high. There's also lots of cards that it combos well with. For instance, the Bounding Courier. Giving something flying and lifesteal will let you win a race, and this card is great for racing. So So yeah, floor is a 2, averages are going to be a 3, but the ceiling's all the way up at a 5. You just have to think about how you're playing with this card, and you have to think very carefully about how you're building with this card. So the rating is so low because it's hard to pick freely. Like, it's hard to just pick this early as a strong Justice card. It's not a fast spell, but it is still good. Like, you still pick it. Elite Myrmidon. For some reason, it slid. This card is so well designed. I think these cards are there's 2 cards like this. When a unit attacks alone, it gets -3 attack. That includes itself. The thing is, you have to ask yourself, how good is a 1/4 with lifesteal? There's a lot of good 2-drops and a lot of good cards that enable this attack that mean that it's most likely to be a 1/4 with lifesteal on defense. When you are attacking, you're not attacking alone with it unless you're happy to just gain that point of life. And it's not that bad to get another unit in and make it a 4/4 lifesteal attack. I'm going to actually raise the ceiling from a 5 to a 6, because if this is if you go 1-drop, 2-drop Myrmidon, then this hits hard and is impossible to race. You do want that 2-drop flyer, so I think it's a little bit better with Primal. There's some good time flyers as well. Emerald Acolyte. Card's not great. If you have some versatile weapons and you can gain the armor, then it's solid, but just on its own in a vacuum, it's not a good enough 3-drop, and it's very fragile. So I can go ahead and raise the ceiling a little bit, but this is just a filler 3-drop, and you want better ones. There is a card called Reforge, and being able to put armor onto a weapon that you can get back is solid, but that's exactly as many steps as pulling from duty a Grumbo's platoon was, and it's not good enough. Like, it's just powering up 1 card. It's like an Oni Forgesmith, but bad. It's still a reasonable way to curb aggro. You'll put it into your market, and you'll play it when you have to. Emerald Beetle. Card's solid. It's very like, this has a slot, so I only gave it a 4, and that's sort of where it caps out. It's just weaker than the other Beetles because its 2 abilities are at odds. Valor only does anything when it's attacking, and a 4-power 3/3 Valor is not good enough compared to the other Beetles. And you can ultimate it to gain 7 armor, but again, its first ability only works on attacking, and its second ability is very defensive. So it's still a good card. It's still playable. It's usually going to be a 4-cost 3/3 with Valor, and that's fine. Or a 3-cost 3/3 with Valor, or a 4-cost 4/4 flat, and that's fine. So you're still playing it if you're Justice. All right, Entrapment. So I gave this a floor of 3 with a ceiling of 5. This one needs a little explanation. This card is good right now and will be bad in a couple of weeks. The more people play around this card, the worse it gets. Because if you have situations where you have a 3/3 and a 6/6, or like if you have 2 creatures, 2 units, one of which matters and one of which doesn't, and your opponent has a few ways to enable Knight, then they can time their attacks around the entrapment. The existence of this card is awesome, because if you are experienced, you can pretend to have entrapment, and you can get your opponent to not attack you until it's Knight. So like, I love that this card is in the set. It's reasonable removal, and you're going to be splashing for it in control decks. So like the time control decks will still splash a little bit of Justice for entrapment. I will occasionally put a Seek Power and a Justice Sigil into my deck to pretend like I have entrapment. It's so cool. But it is usually just going to be a 3 because it's a very average removal spell in a lot of situations. For now, take it pretty high and treat it like a 5. As time goes on, be prepared for your opponent to figure out when you have entrapment. This card's so cool. Oh, having a Justice Sigil in play, even when I have no Justice cards, bluffs entrapment. So I will occasionally on turn 5, Seek Power for a Justice Sigil, play the Justice Sigil, and pass without playing anything to discourage an attack. Which is just fun. I love playing games like that. The longer this card is out, the more chances people have to play with it and against it, the worse it gets. And sometimes it's not going to matter. Sometimes it's going to be, it's like playing around Chloric Mix, but you can't, it's like if Chloric Mix had caveat that said, when your opponent plays these cards, Caloric Mix can't be played. It's so cool. I love this card. This is quintessentially Justice. Justice also has no ways to make it night. There's no nightfall cards in Justice in this set. There might be a rare. There's none at common or uncommon. I'm so excited because I haven't seen all the rares yet. I'm just playing. It's really important to get a feel for the commons and uncommons for this set, and then treat the rares as outliers until you know all the commons and uncommons. I don't know if everybody plays that way, but that is how I think of sets. Fourth Tree Elder. Cards are solid. It's not a lot of work. It's 6 cost, 4/6 with endurance, and that's relevant on flying. So like compared to the snail, if the snail had flying, the snail would be good. But this is just going to be a 6 cost, 4/6 that keeps attacking and still gets to block because it goes over top. It's always going to play as a 4. It's a good finisher for Justice. You're going to run it. You will cut it if you have other 6 cost cards at rare that are stronger. But it's a cool card. It's indicative of how this set will feel. Gate Captain. So I gave this a floor of 3 with an average cost of 3. Because if this is a 4 power 4/5, which is, it makes a 1/2. So on average, this is going to be a 4 power 4/5. That's probably I should probably raise it to it's fine at 3. Because there are other good 4-drops, and it doesn't cleanly block a 4/4. So if your opponent attacks with a 4/4, you do get to kill the 4/4 and you're left with a 1/2, but they'll take out the Gate Captain and a pump spell will still kill both units. It gets a lot better in decks that care about having multiple units. And no, I should raise this. Because if you're just thinking about it, every deck, every color, this is usually going to be a 2-color combination set. So if you are fire, you put weapons on the 1/2. If you are primal, you can make your 1/2 hunt and you can grow your team a little bit and you can sacrifice your Aegis to the Kingfisher. If you are time, then you just need the chump blocker because you need to buy a little time. And if you are shadow, then you are interested in sacrificing that 1/2 unit. So it does have a little bit of extra value on that 1/2 soldier in every color combination. Gleaming Crawler. Card's just solid. Like this, if you played in the draft preview event, you probably had a lot of situations where your opponent flat out refused to kill this card, and you would just let your opponent keep hitting you while trying to flat out refuse to kill this card. But in this set, compared to the draft preview, there's lots of ways to sacrifice it, and there's lots of ways to grow it to force your opponent to kill it. And the fact that it's a versatile weapon, so like generally, cards like this, if this just made a 2/2 relic weapon, or if this just made, there is a card in, what's black red in Shadowfire that it was just a 2-cost 2/2, and when it died into a 2/2 weapon. Stone Scar, thank you, Bootsy. It would die into a 2/2 weapon, and you would play it on turn 2, and your opponent would just kill it, and then you'd have to wait to have a unit down, and then in addition to having the unit down, you'd have to play another weapon to grow it. But with the Gleaming Crawler, if this is the only unit that you have in play, your opponent still doesn't want to kill it because it gives you a 2/2 weapon. And you can attack this into opposing 3/3s and 4/4s because then it'll die into a 2/2 weapon and it'll still just be a 1-for-1 even if you have to take some damage. So it's solid, and there's a lot. You can make it even better with other things with flying and Aegis, or things that use weapons. But like, one of the problems with weapon decks in general is that if you have 10 weapons, that's 10 units that you don't have. And Gleaming Crawler is both. Great Save. This is a card that I will reevaluate when I finish looking at all the rares, because there are not too terribly many units that this kills, but giving something Aegis isn't nothing. So when you're playing Justice, you have to craft your removal suite as you're drafting. So like, Justice specifically has entrapment and weapons and great saves, all of which kill very specific things. So great save, with the reason great save is still solid, so like in other sets this might be a 2, but there's so many weapons that are killing all of the small units that great save killing the units that weapons don't kill is relevant. So you need to put your removal suite together. Justice has very little inherent card advantage. So make sure you're getting your card advantage from other places, and then put a removal suite together. And as you draft, look at what you can kill. So like, take a great save if your shadow and all of your other removal is weapons and the Extinguish that kills something with 4 or less. Or if you're Primal and you have the deal 4 damage to an attacking unit, that plus Great Save will keep you pretty alive. So the ceiling's a little higher, but this is, again, some work. You have to build your removal out. There's not a lot that kills everything, but there's lots of things that kill specific things. Heirloom Blade. By the way, I counted this as like a deal 5 when I was doing the removal stats. So I counted this as the 5 damage removal. But not quite. I gave it like a half. Dude, I don't remember how I calculated that. I am sorry. Alright, Heirloom Blade. Card's really good. A 6 power 4/4 weapon is solid. If you can stack a unit, then it's better. And there are ways to recur and power up your weapons. So I gave it a floor of 3. And it's a floor of 3 when you're just paying 6 for a 4/4 blade. Usually you can sack a unit in an emergency. And if you're recurring it, you can get it up to that ceiling of a 6. It's a cool card. It's very well put together. Alright. Coastal Battle Mage. A 3 power 3/3 with Aegis for 3 is good. That's already good enough. And that threat of activation is so good because there's so many like your opponent can't attack a 3/3 into your Coastal Battle Mage if you have power up because you might be just drawing cards. You might pay 5 power to draw 3 cards and go to a 4/4. The threat of activation on Coastal Battle Mage is huge. It's a if you play on turn 3 and attack into your opponent's 3/3s, they can't block. If they can't attack into your 3/3 if you have any power up, and you can keep playing spells. Card is very good. It is really aggressively powered. And it's good on defense. You do need other spells to make it work, but it's not hard to get other spells, and Spellcraft's a thing. Coastal Curator, not as good as the last one. It can still block. So like, it's usually going to be a 2. I'm gonna put the floor up to a 2. So the card can block, and it's solid. But it's very hard to attack with the Coastal Curator. You can start picking them up if you already have a bunch of spells, but you don't want to pick it before you have the spells. But it's fine in the mid-range decks and the decks that just need a big blocker down while they get to more powerful spells than your rares and mythic. There's just so many you need to pair it with another color because so many of Justice spells are kill an attacking unit, play when your opponent does X, play when you have a specific thing in play. Other than this one, which is just 7 power for 2 4/4s with flying. There's no effort. It's always going to be pretty good. It's always going to be a solid 7 drop. It's not better than 1 5/5 flyer, but there's not a lot of 5/5 flyers. Like, Lovebird is a solid spell, and it is a spell, but it loses to the 4/6. The 6 power 4/6? I don't know where it went. Here it is. So, like, this card just defeats the 2 flyers, but you can play cards to make them bigger. And 2 bodies, spreading 1 powerful spell across 2 bodies is solid. It's a good finishing late game card. I'm going to go ahead and raise the ceiling a little bit, but it's not going to change the average rating. Moment of Heroism. Reasonable pump spell. It gets better when you have reasons to pump things. But it's not always going to pump things. If it could be played on your opponent's units as well, it would be a little bit better. Have a reason to be playing this, and don't find the reason after you pick it. You pick this after you have a reason. Mounted Archer. This card's just good. A 3 power 3/2 that is variably a 4/3. But this is a 3 power 3/2 that generates an armor when you play it, and will often be a 4/3. If you have more hunt, it's much better. But there's also weapons that hunt. So being able to get the weapons to hunt, or just hunt after you have weapons, is very good. So like, this card will be picked high because it's good in the aggressive decks and the mid-range decks and the weapons decks and the Nightfall decks. So all the decks that you want, all the different Justice archetypes want the Mounted Archer, so it's got a pretty high score. I gave it a 5, even though the floor is only a 3. And the floor is only a 3 when it hunts 1 time and dies. Otherwise, it's usually going to be a 4 or 5, and it can get up to a 6 if you have enough hunt. Myrmidon Drone. Card's pretty cool. It's a 2-cost 3/3. Its ceiling is a 4 because if you have good 1-drops, it's solid. The thing is, It's not a 2-cost 3/3. So it's fine that when your opponent's unit attacks alone, it's a 1/3, because usually the units that attack alone are early in the game, so they're going to be 2/2s and 2/3s, and this blocks those very well. By the time it's relevant that it turns into a 1/3, your opponent is going to want to be attacking with more units, more than one unit anyway. And if you play this as a 2-power 3/3 and then play a 3-power whatever and then attack with both your units on turn 4, that's solid. But if you can get a 1-drop down and then attack with a relevant 1-drop and a drone on turn 3, then it's very good. Then the ceiling is a 4. So like, it is kind of a filler Justice card, but it's not a bad filler Justice card. Myrmidon Helm. It's best in the mid-range decks. It's best when you are still using that piece of power on turn 5. But if you're using a piece of power on turn 5, this is just a cheap weapon. This is a 4-power weapon that draws a card. So it's only good when you are using Justice Sigil, but it's also not hard to build a deck that uses the Justice Sigil. You just want to have enough Justice that there's still some in your deck when you draw the Helm. I like the versatile weapons a lot. I think they're pretty strong. But like, if you're just paying 4 to deal 2 damage to a unit and draw a card, that's still fine. Like, it's not great, but it puts it at a 3. You want to put this on like something with Flying or Aegis. Rebellious Mistral. This is another card we're going to revisit, and I got to put that note in. I only didn't because for some reason I can't, the font size changed. Revisit. Alright, so we're going to be revisiting the Mistral later. It's hard. Like, there's a 3-cost 3/3 with Flying that silences 1 unit, and they expect us to pay an extra 3 to silence a 2nd unit. Like, it's still a flyer, even if it's a little fragile. You need to be silencing 2 units, but so many of the units do their thing when they come into play that silencing them once they're in play doesn't do that much. There are a few units that are really good to cycle, like the Cocoon out of Primal. It's a 1-cost 0/4. You get to say that it stays a 1-cost 0/4, but if you're not playing this until turn 6, your opponent will already be able to make it into a Moth that eats this. So like, it's pretty weak overall. You'll still play it, and it's a fantastic market card. This might be the very best card to put into your market in Justice. So like, it still has a place. It's still going to be picked and played, but you don't want to pick it too high. That double Justice requirement is very high. All right, Star Mole. So this is not the 6-drop you want. The problem with the Star Mole is if this were a 6-power 6/6, it would be fine. A 6-power 3/6, you need to still have power cards in your hand to trigger that double damage. You can set up kills with this where you make it huge and then give it double damage, but you will always be in need of that empower trigger to make this card strong. And it's still relevant. It's still a relevant body. The floor is a 2. It's not a 1. It's not totally unplayable, but you want to be looking for better 6-drops if you can get them. And you can get the ceiling up if you can give it. There's a few cards in other colors that give like Overwhelm and make it bigger. There's the Fire Justice. There's a Stone Scar card that gives something Overwhelm and Lifesteal, and you can play that and then give this some power, and then it's great. But this card will take some work to actually get the full value out of, and there's better 6-drops even in Justice. Steel Avenger. I love this card. You really want to play this when you're attacking, because you don't want to play a 3-cost 2/2, but you do want to play a 3-cost 4/4. So if you can get one of your units to die after the Avengers comes down, it's great, but you need to get something to die right away. You got to get this down and then get something dead. I'm going to go ahead and raise the ceiling up to a 6, because if you can play this at the same time, the fast shadow spell that deals 3 to something and you sack a unit is so good with Steel Avenger even on turn 4. And like, if your opponent plays a Thunder Shot to deal 3 damage, and you can grow something in response, that's a 3-for-1. So cool card. It's interesting to play with. You have to think about how you're playing it. You have to think about when you're playing it, and you need a lot of other units, and preferably even ways to encourage your units to die, even if that's just being aggressive. If you're very aggressive, like a Fire Justice deck, you don't have to sack your units. You can just play down the Steel Avenger, attack with everything. Strength of Many. So this is the pump spell that you're going to have to learn to play around in Justice. Because this is going to be the easiest one to test for. So if your opponent has 3 units and a 2/2 and you have a 4/4 you don't care about, attack with your 4/4, because you can see if they have a Strength of Many. If you have your own fast spells, like even just the Incinerate out of fire, then responding to a strength of many by killing a unit will mean that it's not quite big enough. Pay attention to strength of many. Pay attention when you have it and you have to figure out how big you're making your unit. Pay attention when your opponent has 2 power up and you have instant speed removal. Look for opportunities to bait this out. Look for opportunities to respond to it. And take, because if your opponent plays a strength of many on attack or block, and you kill something in response, then you just got a 3-for-1. Because they played their strength of many, you get to eat the unit that strength of many would have kept alive, and you get to kill a unit at fast speed. So like, this is Green's strong pump spell. It takes some work to make work, and you will get blown out by Star Moles that with 6 units in play. They'll break a stalemate with bad flyers and strength of many. Try and figure out when they happen. It's a really cool pump spell. It's excellent design. Tunnel Blockade. Still not 100% sure on this one. 3 power for a 2/4 with Aegis is how it ends up. Use it when you can use multiple units, when you can use soldiers, when you can grow a team. It is a spell that turns into a unit. So it's nice if you are playing cards that care about playing spells or spells in your discard pile. Because it's like collection rounds or Grenade and Rescue. Like, it is just units in the form of a spell. It's a cool card. It'll always play okay. There are better 3-drops. So like, if you have access to better 3-drops, like this Steel Avenger, then play those instead. Unless you have use for multiple bodies. Warren Delivery. Here's the market card. Same rating as the others. This is a pretty normal one. Justice is in the middle in terms of useful extra cards to have in your market. And you will take a sigil more often than you'd think out of the Justice market. I love these cards. I love the market cards. I'm so glad the market's back. Warren Tactician. Very powerful 3-drop. So it's a little bit fragile. There's a lot of pingers. There's a lot of things that deal 1 damage or something. But the Warren Tactician, if you are an aggressive deck, then you have a 3/1 that lets you attack. Like, this card lets you race. A 3/1 lifesteal lets you race opposing aggressive decks. And it lets you play down as a blocker against... if you are the mid-range deck. So if you're the aggressive deck or the mid-range deck, then you want this card. If you, especially in mid-range, stunning 2 enemy units at a time is really powerful. It closes the game very fast. This is the Justice Mana Sink. I think it's better than the other 8-power Mana Sinks, although not by much. They're all pretty good. Warrenborn Mistral. This card is not good enough as a 1-power 1/1 flying with Aegis. Put things on it. I'm going to raise the ceiling a little bit because it doesn't take a ton. Like, this is great in the weapons deck. Or if you have enough Warcry triggers, this is great in just when you are growing your Warrenborn Mistral. This is a great card. It interacts well as a finisher, even if you have enough of the pump spell, which I can't remember the name of. Where is it? Strength of Many. If you have enough Strength of Many, it's a good finisher. Just don't play it in a vacuum. Don't jam it in. It's like the Valkyrie Aspirant, but without the ability to pay 8 to make it huge. All right, last card in the set. If you don't know, this was my preview card, which makes me a little bit biased, but I do think it's fantastic. Like, so Harmless Question simply stuns a unit, but it is a 2-power 3/2 on turn 2, and later on in the game, you get to stun something when it comes down. And this is a faction that cares about playing additional spells. So like, it's just a cool card, and I think it will perform very well. It's very efficient and limited. Okay, so that was the whole set review for commons and uncommons. We have finished going through all of the between today and yesterday, we finished all the commons and uncommons. I'm gonna go ahead and do shoot. I don't have a ton of time. I can do some of a draft. I don't have time to finish it. That was fun. I really liked reviewing this set. I learn a lot when I review this set, and this is a great set. I'm very excited for it. It's pretty deep at the commons and uncommons, and I am excited to find all of the rares and mythics to learn more about them. I do have a soft spot, thanks Beard, for this card. Alright. Where am I? Yeah, Beard's the one who gave me this preview card to talk about on my stream. Okay. We're going to do one draft. I don't know if I have time to finish it, but I will do as much as I can. I was supposed to do a thing with my brother, but it doesn't seem like he's still awake, so I may have a little more time than I thought. All right, so we're going to go ahead and... This new... All right. Let's draft. Let's use some of these ratings and see what we've learned and explore some rares. What is this Twitch bonus from? I don't think I'm actually top 10 anymore. I should probably check before I change it. The scale was 1 to 10. But here, actually, really quick, let me just go back. All right, so the scale is 1 to 10. Here it is. And then there's a difficulty. It's pretty... Yes, 5 is very good. 3 is fill. Your deck is usually going to be mostly 3s. So, like, your goal, a good deck is 4 and up. So, like, 4 to 6 is pretty normal. I might reevaluate the scale because I have never found a 10. But, like, the 10 is still useful because, like, for instance, the sight. The 5-color sight that plays 5 spells, that card is a 10 if you have units that come down after you play it and an easy time getting 5 colors. But, like, on average, it's going to be a 2. So the range is what matters. So the range from 2 to 10 is more important than actually being a 10. All right. But if you have any other questions, feel free to ask them. And we're going to go ahead and do a draft. So I like to try and use my scale to do the first draft. So I'll go back and take a few checks. Ooh, I can put on my music. Yeah, this was my experimental draft. It went badly. I was testing cards for this set review, and I tested like the moon thing. Oh, I can put on whatever music I want now. I do love this song. There we go. Good catch. Oh, because I was resizing the screen to do searches. Hang on. I know the problem. I love the delivery cards. I'm so glad they're around. I accidentally changed my password and get locked out. All right, that looks right. Let's play! Yeah, my test draft cost me a lot of ranks. I don't know what this card does. That's badass. Whoa, that's so cool. All right, so we've got Kelmac. If Kelmac isn't the pick, then it's Blurwing Raider based on... So on rate, on the ratings I gave everything, then the pick order goes Blurwing Raider, Forceful Interruption, Twilight Lantern, Mantis, Acolyte. So, but I think that this is awesome, and I want to play with this card, so we're going to take Kelmac. Cool! Yeah, earlier Comet beat me to get to Masters, and that felt very cool. So the other nice thing about this is it's the only shadow card. I think this card is very strong, but I'm going to take this Kelmac. Okay, we're going to take this Hive Hexagon. So just on the rating we just did, everything here has a rating. Hive Hexagon, I averaged 5 with a ceiling of 7. So we're going to take that. Steel Warren Responder can get to a ceiling of 7, but the average rating is only going to be a 3. And everything else is going to be a little bit lower. Really? This is the first time I've ever seen this card, but it's so cool. We're going to take the Hive Hexagon, though. I really like this Chameleon Hide. The Acolyte is good. Hive Stinger, Wormstone, Canyon Lurker. What a great pack. I think we're just taking the Hive Stinger because we did just take the Hexagon and I want a combo. We also want cheap interaction and life gain if we're going to be a Nightfall deck. The other option would be the Chameleon Hide, which I like, but I want ways to recur the Chameleon Hide to get extra value out of it. So we're going to go by the rating and take this Hive Stinger. This is a card that I like for the market. On rate, Justice cards, both of these are higher. Lumen Shepherd and Canyon Lurker are comparable. We're going to just go ahead and take that Lumen Shepherd. Because if we're going to take a 6-drop in a Nightfall deck, we want to make sure that it's something that does something before we get to 6 mana. And Midnight Hunter is a solid card, but it starts at 2, and we can get it up to a 5 if we have consistent units to sacrifice. But right now, we don't have those units. Let's just snap up the Shepherd. Seek Power, Veteran Strategist, Hive Stinger, Nomad are all good. Of note, there is no Shadow card in this pack. So we need Strategist and Hive Stinger. And I would rather take personally, I'm leaning towards the Hive Stinger, but I just want to go ahead and see what I gave these for ratings. So the Hive Stinger, I gave the Hive Stinger a 4 with a ceiling of 5. And the 04, I gave a 3 with a ceiling of 4. So we're going to go ahead and take this. Good night, ears. We're doing pretty well. I just finished the set review, and I'm doing a little bit of drafting. And take the second Stinger. I think the Stinger is fantastic. We just need to be a little careful not to have too many of them. Magmatic Sentinel is great, but not in the Nightfall deck. It's just a good mid-range card. So if I take this, I'm saying I'm going to be a Timefire mid-range deck. But I think the Refuge Roller is just a little bit stronger. That feeds all of the sacrificed units, and it's easy to cast. Stargazing. Oh, so that's a really late Thunder Shot. But it's also double Primal. So it's between Stargazing and the Colony Steward. The Colony Steward is just really efficient. But if I want to be a dedicated Nightfall deck, which I think I do. No, wait. We don't want to be Nightfall with Kelmac, huh? You don't want to keep triggering Nightfall for Kelmac to be good. That's so funny. All right, let's take the Steward. Maggot Swarm is also solid. Maggot Swarm's kind of awkward. It's really good in the Nightfall deck because it's a card that you want to be one of multiple spells you play later on. But we're just going to take the 3-power 3/3. This is such a cool card. Wow, it's just so well designed. I love that. Your opponent has 1 turn to kill it? That's so cool. So I'm going to commit hard to time and figure out the rest from there. Gnarled Ant is solid when we have the Hive Hexagon, which I really want a second one of. These cards are both bad. Entrapment is good, but right now I don't want to commit to another color. And Rift Crystal does let me splash, but it's not the splash card you want. You don't want to take turn 2 off in this format. Yeah. We were talking a lot about Obstinate Wrath because Obstinate Wrath is better the more... You need 3 and 4 drops that trigger the rat, and that's really difficult. I do love this song, but I'm not feeling it. This is what I'm in the mood for. I will eventually draft a mill deck, just not today. We're going to take the rat. I like Last Light Infusion, and I may still end up trying to be a Nightfall deck. So I'll still take this and just be careful playing it around the Kelmac. Bad pack, useless. I'm going to pass the Justice card just to be nice. And not a great card. I don't know this card. Wow! That's hot. That's a very cool card. Amber Acolyte, Tending the Hive, and Ancient Widow. On the ratings that I just gave, Ancient Widow is the best card, so that's what we're going to take. Ignite is tempting. But let's see what signals we get here. The ban is hot. Oh, that's cool. Is this a reprint? No. I mean, Splashing Fire is nice. That's fine. Hold At Bay is bad. I think the Acolyte's pretty good, and I like Rotting Sickness, and we're pretty short on removal. Right now, I've only got the Hive Stingers, so I'm not too happy about taking the Sickness so high. I'm kind of interested in this Praxis Helix just for the splash, but I'm trying to get out of the habit of splashing too aggressively. This is really cool. I love this art too. I'm trying to get out of the habit of being 3, 4, and 5 colors. I've said that before my first draft when I first picked the site that is all 5 colors. That was fun. That deck was so much fun. That's what Comet beat actually earlier today, this morning. Acolyte or Sickness is the pick, and I'm gonna default to my ratings. Nah, this is gonna take too long. I'm just gonna take Rotting Sickness. I think the card's solid. Yes! Yes! We got what I wanted. This is a great pack. Time is right also, and this Ignite is of note. This Thunder Shot is of note. But Amber Acolyte, Last Light Infusion, Myrmidon Raiders, we're just taking the Hexagon. Hexagon's so good. Okay. Shadow is dry. There's 3 cards missing, and there's no Shadow. Let's see. Primal is average. These are all average Primal cards. The Sentinel is actively good, and the Nightwatch Volley is actively good. So I could pivot into Fire here, because my Shadow is pretty average. Like, Rotting Sickness is fine, but if I'm getting burn spells, then I don't need it. And Kelmac and Obstinate Rat, like, I'm probably not playing the Obstinate Rat. It's just funny. If I get, like, 4 Obstinate Rats, yeah, I really like, I think this is fantastic design. This card is so cool. It's probably just the Hive Singer. Blind Storyteller is tempting. I'm more noting that there are 3 Primal cards in this pack. But we're going to take the Hive Singer and worry a little bit less about Shadow here. Yeah, there's lots of fire. I feel like people aren't... Shadow really wants to sacrifice its units, and Refuge Roll is the only thing that generates a positive advantage. I might be mono time. This card is the one card that, after playing with all of the sets, I think needs to come up a little bit. Yeah, let's just take the Gnarled Ant and hope for a 3rd Hexagon. Mantis Claw or Vein Parasite? This Vein Parasite is looking pretty good. I think this card is one of the best commons in Shadow. Deadly is just very relevant in this set. The Acolyte is fine. I could still just try and be the Nightfall deck. My Shadow is so average. Besides this Ancient Widow, which is very strong, my Shadow is pretty weak. I think I just take the Claw here. Is we need the Claw and the Parasite? I mean, I do have the Gnarled Ants to follow up the Parasite. I'll take the Parasite, because Mantis Claw is replaceable. Seek Power or Maggot Swarm. So one important thing to note is there's no more Inscribe. So Seek Power lets me splash something if I end up wanting to be mostly time, which I may based on what I get in the next pack. Youngblood Glider is also very strong. This is a good attacker. I'm going to take the Seek Power. Second Rat or Midnight Hunter. I'm going to take the Midnight Hunter over the second Rat. If this could block, it would still be good. I'll take the Sentinel and run it over the Widow. The Rats are fun, but they're not that good. The last pick, Winter's Grass, is just worth noting. Lights Out is very good, and that is a reason to be Shadow again. Over Fire. Anything else I want? This is a pretty bad pack. Friendly Visit is playable. Hermit is good if you're aggressive, but we're just going to take the Lights Out. Very strong removal. Bust Out, Toxicology, Gravitator Trainee. I'm going to take Toxicology. And we are Xenon solidly now. Prospector. I've only got the 3 Stingers for my Prospector. Automark's fine. Again, there's no Shadow cards suddenly. I mean, there is one. There could be the only one. There are 2 ice quakes. Yeah, I do have the hexagons. We'll take the prospector. I completely missed the hexagons. Hamlet Axe is a card I want to reevaluate because it's a cheap weapon that is easy to pick up now. So that might be good. Collection rounds is good. I think I just want Bust Out for the removal. Yeah. No time cards. Skycrag Adept. It's a late Skycrag Adept. Skycrag is not just an automatic thing anymore. Midnight Goon is a lot better with versatile weapons. Let's get that out. Fine, not playing the Night Watch Volley or the Sentinel. I think we're just solidly Xenon. Right. Yeah, I think it's a solid card now where it was not good before. I'm gonna take the Goon because none of these cards are strong enough to go Primal. This card is, but not in this deck. None. Wow, this was a dead pack for. It's not dead pack. We got all our removal in this pack. I think Noter and Collects is if I will play the Noter and Collects if I get the 3rd hexagon. Ooh, another Bust Out. Yeah. Removal is important here. Hour, Thunder Pop, and Ice Glider are both still in this pack, but the Hour Makar is just solid. Mercenary or collection rounds. So Mercenary is a little bit better than the collection rounds, but I just need 2 drops because I'm not gonna be playing this Oddsman Rat. If I would need 4 hexagons before I'm willing to play the taxation. Recovery! Wow, what a pack! 1, 2, 3, 4 first pickable cards and a deep freeze. I think it's still just recovery. The Beetle is so good, but recovery is better. There's a Jackal King. That's what I was hoping for. Rotting Sickness is of note, but I just want the Jackal King. Coordinator's fine. Tending the Hive is good. But I want the Jackal King. It's a good finisher. Wormstone, Rotting Sickness, Vein Parasite, Lurker. So now I'm going to build a little bit. I need 2s. Hamlet Axe is fine. Taxation is not. Northern Collects is a maybe, but I just don't think I need it right now. 12, 18, 28 cards. So I'm close to my limit. What do I have that triggers off the Vein Parasite? I have Midnight Goon, 2 Gnarled Ants. Oh no! Beard, that's such a sad story. That's a tragic story. I do really like Canyon Lurker like a lot more than the Midnight Hunter, but I think Vein Parasite's a little too strong. This is tempting. This is also a bad pack. This Ignite is really tempting. Feed the Flames is a lot better now than it was in the other set. It could have been. You're right, Bootsy. Could have been. This is interesting. This is a cool card. Can I do anything interesting with the Horrifying Helm? Not really. You can. You can just send it. Rat is a trap. He's not wrong. I like the maggots. I'm just deciding if I want the Tusker or a Gnarled Ant. But I think I have enough 4-drops. So I'm going to take the maggots. I'll take 2 Last Light Infusions. Oasis Seeker or Hive Stinger. Is the 4th Hive Stinger too much? No, I just want the 2-drop right now. As much as I want this, I could take the 3rd rat. I think the rat is a trap, though. Rift Crystal is not quite good enough. Beekeeper's good, though. Please do. Please do, Quebec. I'd like that. Is my curve low enough for stargazing? It's not. I don't really have a lot of ways to sack stuff. I'm just going to take the Wormstone because I do have a lot of spells. Hmm. I don't have anything that sacrifices. I gotta remember how to add friends. I like Wormstone. I just am not sure I have enough spells for it. Ah, I'll get it in here. Yeah, but one Midnight Hunter is not worth it. Like you play the Midnight Hunter when you don't have other removal, but I do have other removal. So I'll take the roller and the distributor, but I'm not likely to play either of them. But this is not a bad secluded druid deck. All right, I'm gonna build it out. Um, you do want like as many sources of healing as you can get, even if they're small. 3, 1, 2. Heal, heal, heal. Only add a little bit of lifesteal. Could play both rats. I'm gonna play the Northern Clux. I think that's worth it. And the hour is good. So an hour and a seek power means I can get away with just 16 power. Play all the removal. And all the 2-drops. I don't think I'm going to play the Hunter. I don't think it's quite good enough. All right, so that's 23, 24, 25. I am going to play the Seek Power just because I have a lot of influence requirements. Beekeeper and Steward. 28. So I have room for one more card. And I kind of like the Last Light Infusion. Yeah, Last Light Infusion. Do I have anything that steals? If you have anything that steals, you still want to build a market. Oh shoot. Alright, Scuffle 7883. I don't know if you have the plus. Something like that. Alright, let's give it a try. Can you hear the eternal sounds? Is it just me? There. Because I had it muted. Alright, I gotta call it pretty soon. I got time for 1, maybe 2 games. Okay. So now you should be able to hear it. Everyone should go support it, dude. She's awesome. Oh shit, I fell a lot. All the way down to it. Multiple new friends. Tested too hard. This is fine hand. I really want that second time, because turn 2 Oasis Seeker, triggering the Hexagon on turn 3 is very good. Uh-oh. That's real bad for me. We're okay. We're okay. We do the time. This card's so good. It's really cool. This is also a really cool card. Alright, I need to kill this. I need a Rotting Sickness. Alright, so now I have a 3-2. I can't block. I'm probably should block anyway, but I really want to trigger this Hexagon. This is bad. This is gonna start just being a crazy removal spell later. I think I still just want to get the Hexagon down so I can get the Ant down, even though this just kills the Ant.
The only way to travel.
Oh. Damn, he's got all the answers today.
Do not approach the caravan.
He has an answer for every card before I play it, and I'm gonna lose now. This is a game I would have felt really good about if I had gone first. This is a do, and she's awesome. So he gets to just deal 4 and then attack. Pretty lame. So now he gets to kill whatever I play the turn I play it, and then attack me again. Unless I can kill this. Oh!
Do not approach the caravan.
That's fine. He didn't have the power. I think I just have to bust out here. Otherwise, I don't get to keep my blocker. Yeah. Alright. Busting out the 1-drop. Does not feel great, but we'll manage. Adu's one of my favorite singers right now. She's so cool. She's got such a cool voice. We'll just get the parasite down. I have to make this B to come back. Which means I need to draw something that gains me health. I can't believe they silenced my gnarled ant. How could you, Flash? That's so cruel. Damn. I need Flash to stop having it.
Your sword.
Taking 6. Hive Stinger lets me attack and make a 2/2 chump block forever. Means like I have to draw Hive Stinger specifically, but I don't win unless I draw Hive Stinger specifically. Nope, that's it. Wow. This was devastating. This hurt so bad. He just dealt with every single card the turn I played it. I didn't have anything to let me recover from being on the draw that game. Damn, we probably swapped ranks for that. Alright. Let's try again. This might be my last game either way. Well, then we'll go raid better out. I can't keep this. I don't have any units. Where's all my units? Probably still shouldn't, but at least the Riding Sickness gives me a turn 2 play. Riding Sickness into Beekeeper is also solid. Yeah, I drew all my removal of this game, which is not a terrible place to be. Okay. Could be... What's their flash creature? Alright, so I have a superior board presence. Now I just have to kill everything John Holio plays the rest of the game. Which this is the hand for it. What you got? Don't know. I don't think there's any time sweepers. I think all the sweepers are justice. And primal, but the primal sweepers are double. I think I just want to lights out this one. We're not going to get to the point. So when you play a lights out, it's important to figure out whether you're going to get to the point when you... Will this be a game where you can possibly play 2 lights out? Which means, will you get to 8 power? And you are a little more likely to get 8 power if you're hunting enough, but I've not a lot of hunt in this deck. If I just pump both of these, his blocks are pretty bad. Ooh, a stone skin. Last turn. And I've still got 4 removal spells. And John Julio's at 1, and it looks like he just had a slow hand this game. Shoot, I really got to call it after this one. So this Saturday, I'm doing... Saturday and Sunday are both, Saturday and Sunday are both Magic days. I've got the Cube Finals for the Decathlon and Kaldheim Open, which I may enter. It depends on time. And then this next week, I will be streaming lots of Eternal, including the set review for Rares and Mythics. But I want to get a chance to play with some more of the cards. So next week's Eternal streams will be Rares and Mythics, in addition to just drafts. We'll be playing around with the set a lot. Probably Tuesday is going to be my main Eternal day, and I will try and do one Thursday as well. But I'll have a schedule out early next week. Let's see if he has got a spell to play first. Great. Alright, I'll finish this out and post the results in my Discord, but I gotta call it a night. I'll see everybody later. That was a lot of fun. I didn't get to play that much, but I had a lot of fun doing the set review. I'll keep doing these for future sets, at least for draftable sets. And if you want to see the spreadsheets, you're welcome. Good thing. If you want to see the spreadsheets, or if you want to see the slides, feel free to join my Discord. I have the links there. I will be putting all these into a spreadsheet, and then I will set the initial ratings aside from the ratings that we develop over time. So once we play for the set, if you have an argument or you think a card performs really well in some situations and needs a higher ceiling, then I will put it in the spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet is meant to be something that people can reference and use to guide their own drafts. For now, I only have the slides, but I will get them into the spreadsheets from my work at the shop a little bit later. And I will see everybody later. Next week, I will definitely do some number of Eternal streams. I'm not positive when those will be, but this weekend I'm doing competitive Magic events, and next Wednesday is going to be my subscriber tournament. The format is MTG Arena Historic Brawl. I'll see everyone later. Good night.